Chapter 50-59. Yiqing Luo touched her chin. There is a chance. She could go and see what kind of poison the First Lady was suffering from. If there was a chance to help him detoxify the poison, it was not impossible. However, before this, she'd better settle her own matters first. Yiqing Luo didn't limit the topic to Madame Huang Ci. The reason why she mentioned Madame Huang Ci was to indirectly ask about the current situation in the demon region. After a few questions, Yiqing Luo roughly had a little bit of understanding towards the devil region. In the infernal domain, magic was the main source of power. Magic power was similar to her so-called profound energy. But there was still a clear difference between magic power and dark energy. However, Dmo Xian should have placed something on her. In the eyes of the people of the infernal region, she was exactly the same as the people from the demon domain. Even if he used profound energy in the eyes of the devil region's people, it was still demonic energy. No wonder these people from the devil region didn't find anything strange about her when they saw her face. Even worse after she made her move. Cinnabar also did not show any signs of abnormality. She was even shocked that she didn't know about Madame Huang Ci. After a few rounds of beating around the bush, Yiqing Luo suddenly tugged Zhu Sha's pig ear as she bent over slightly and leaned close to it. Then her pink lips curled into a casual smile. I have one last question. Zhu Sha immediately widened her pig eyes. Ask? I'll definitely tell you everything I know. Yiqing Luo's smile rose slightly, the long and narrow arc revealing a low charm. Your devil region, where in the world has the existence of the devil dragon? Mystic dragon? When these two words came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth, Zhu Sha was completely dumbfounded. His voice trembled as he repeated, Demonic dragon? Yiqing Luo smiled as she nodded. Looks like you know where the demon dragon is? What she had said in front of the world group earlier wasn't all fake. She was indeed going to the infernal domain to find the demonic dragon. However, what she wanted was not the blood of the demonic dragon. Instead, he had to find the demon dragon's lair. It was indicated on the Shen Yen Dubhe diagram. The demonic dragon lair was the entrance. You must be joking, right? Zhu Sha jumped up. Demon dragon? How can there be dragons in the infernal domain? Since I asked, I naturally have them. Yiqing Luo didn't continue to clamp down on Zhu Sha as she allowed it to use its hooves to slap the ground. You're not a qualified devil domain pig, you haven't even heard of the devil dragon. Don't tell me I haven't heard of it. Ask anyone in the infernal domain who knows where the demonic dragon is. Zhu Sha exploded again. Dragons? How could a creature like a dragon appear in our infernal zone? Its huge nose puffed out 2 streams of air. If you want to find a dragon, you might as well go to other realms. I heard that Nirvana realm, that low-level realm, even had dragons. Even such a low-leveled realm has a dragon, but the devil domain doesn't have one? Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly as her tone was filled with ridicule. Zhu Sha remained silent for a moment as her pig eyes stared suspiciously at Yiqing Luo. Why do I feel that? You totally don't treat yourself as someone from the devil domain? Aren't you from the infernal domain? Oh, I'm not. Yiqing Luo admitted straightforwardly. Zhu Sha. Like hell I'll believe you. His questioning was fruitless. Yiqing Luo knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of this pig. So she directly waved her hand, asking it to scram. Another 2 hours had passed with this pig. Dmo Xian was still nowhere to be seen. She didn't know where he had run off to. Chapter 50-60. Yiqing Luo wasn't worried that she and Dmo Xian were separated. Or perhaps Dmo Xian had left her here. After she woke up, the surrounding environment and the place she was at was absolutely safe. Presumably, Dmo Xian must have been tied up by something. In this devil region, she didn't know what happened, but the connection between the Azure Dew bracelet and the pet space was totally cut off. She had better stay here first, waiting for Dmo Xian to come back and look for her. This place. It was known as the Death Devil Forest. There shouldn't be any other devil region's people here. Zhu Sha had been making noises, asking Yiqing Luo to let it go. But when Yiqing Luo really asked it to scram, it instead shamelessly leaned towards Yiqing Luo's side. That pig-head face was filled with a fawning and wretched smile. Big beauty, you look so good, where do you want to go, why not bring me along? What does it have to do with you that I look good? Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at it, unrestrainedly admitting that she looked good, but following that she rejected it decisively. You're just a useless pig, do you want to stay by my side and be eaten by me? Zhu Sha. Until now you're still thinking of eating me? Yiqing Luo crossed her arms. My roasted pig skill is not bad, do you want to try? This pig was obviously trouble. She had just arrived at the devil region and Dmo Xian wasn't by her side. It was better to avoid trouble as much as possible. This pig absolutely could not be left alive. She originally thought that based on Zhu Sha's temperament, she had been frightened. At the very least it would leave obediently. But unexpectedly, Zhu Sha's eyes were misty with tears as it raised its pig head, facing death with equanimity towards Yiqing Luo. To be eaten by a big beauty like you, it's my honor. If you want to eat, then eat. Yiqing Luo. Forget it. If it wanted to stay here, then so be it. Yiqing Luo returned to the clean and soft grass as she sat down cross-legged. Zhu Sha saw that she didn't chase it away and instantly opened its pig mouth as it laughed. I knew a big beauty is tough on the outside but soft on the inside. How could a big beauty bear to eat me? It waddled its buttocks to Yiqing Luo's side as it laid down. Yiqing Luo glanced at the pig head by her feet as she squinted her eyes and asked, "This is the Death Devil Forest and you're following me here? Aren't you afraid that something might happen?" "There's a beauty here." Zhu Sha replied as if it was a matter of course. If the great beauty dares to stay in the Death Devil Forest, it means that the great beauty is completely unafraid of the Death Devil Forest. Even a beauty isn't afraid, so why should I be? Yiqing Luo? No, it wasn't that she wasn't afraid, but she totally didn't know what was so terrifying about this Death Devil Forest. But you don't have to worry, big beauty. Right now, everyone is rushing towards Devil Head City. Even the demons of the Death Devil Forest are rushing towards Devil Head City. This Death Devil Forest should be very safe for the time being. Zhu Sha saw that Yiqing Luo didn't say a word, so she spoke out to pacify her. Occasionally there are one or two troublemakers. The beauty just needs to lift a finger and you will be able to settle them, Yiqing Luo. Hehe. You really thought highly of her. But Devil Head City. Those were the main cities of the 3 continents. It was also the main city where the person with the highest status in the demon domain, the one who was known as the Demon Palace Lord, was located. The people from the demon domain were rushing towards the main city. It was obvious that something big had happened in the main city, and it was something that concerned the demon domain. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly. What happy event is happening in Devil Head City? That's right, that's right. Upon mentioning this, Zhu Sha's entire pig became excited. Have you heard of Overlord? 7th Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5061. Overlord? Not only heard of it, simply couldn't be any more familiar with it. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly as her eyes looked towards Zhu Sha without blinking. Overlord. What's the matter? I'd not expected the great beauty to actually like that type of man like the Overlord. Zhu Sha secretly sniggered a few times. The minute you hear the Overlord's name, you become so agitated. Yiqing Luo's fist hammered on its head. Stop talking rubbish. Zhu Sha's head arched towards the ground as its body laid limp on the ground. Its pig trotters were still thrashing about with all its might, its mouth puffing and puffing as it howled. Howling and howling. When it saw the young lady's squinted eyes, reflecting a dangerous cold glint, it immediately stopped thrashing its pig trotters. Great beauty, even if you like the Overlord, there's absolutely no possibility between the two of you. Zhu Sha spoke in an earnest and heartfelt tone. Great beauty, stop thinking about the Overlord, why not consider me? Yiqing Luo's fist landed once again. Zhu Sha rolled on the ground. I'm serious. After I turn into a human, I'm not any worse off than the Overlord. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers clenched tightly one by one. The bones that she pinched made a kacha-kacha sound. Zhu Sha instantly became despondent. Great beauty, no matter how much you like the Overlord, he's also someone whom you can't even think about. If it was in the past you liked the Overlord, then you can try to use your honey trap to see if you can make the Overlord take the bait. When Zhu Sha said this, she mumbled softly, although you're definitely not going to succeed, but at least you still have a chance to dream. But, no. Zhu Sha raised its pig head as it gave a long sigh and spoke in an especially earnest and heartfelt tone, as though an elder was consoling her. The Overlord is already the fiancé of Lord Demon Hall. This time Devil Head City's joyous event is the Overlord and Lord Demon Hall's marriage ceremony. Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. Her pair of long and narrow eyes unconsciously contracted. Her slender brows creased into a bundle. Say that again. No matter how many times I say it, it won't change the fact. Zhu Sha looked at Yiqing Luo's devastated look as her voice weakened by quite a bit. Great beauty, the Overlord is a god that ordinary people like us are unable to come into contact with. In this world only Devil Palace Lord is barely worthy of the Overlord. Yi Qing Luo interrupted its words. When did they announce their marriage and when did the wedding ceremony start? Zhu Sha, just a few hours ago? Lord Devil Palace personally announced to the world that he sincerely invites the devil cultivators of the 3 continents of the Devil Domain to head to Devil Head City to participate in the marriage ceremony. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The wedding ceremony is in 3 days. Beauty, are you thinking of snatching the bride? A few hours ago? In other words, she and DMO Xian had just arrived at the Devil's Domain. DMO Xian went over to that whatever Lord Devil Palace? This so-called wedding ceremony, it was probably the wishful thinking of the Demon Hall. However, why didn't Xian react? Moreover, he still hadn't returned to the demonic forest to look for her? Could it be trapped in the Devil Hall? Yi Qing Luo's squinted eyes were filled with a chilly intent. She pursed her pink lips slightly as she abruptly stood up. Let's go to Devil Head City. She couldn't wait for Xian here any longer. Xian must have met with trouble. Zhu Sha was so frightened that it went into a daze. Great beauty, you really want to snatch the bride? You're crazy. 7th young miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th young miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5062. No matter how powerful you are, you can't go snatch Lord Demon Hall's marriage. Furthermore, even if you go snatch the marriage, the Overlord will not let you. Big beauty, calm down. Don't be rash. Zhu Sha jumped up and bit Yi Qing Luo's robe. The young lady's pink dress was already tattered. After being bitten, another large piece of cloth was ripped off, revealing the young lady's fair arm. Yi Qing Luo waved Zhu Sha away. Either lead the way to Devil Head City or you stay here. Big beauty, have you forgotten what I said earlier? Zhu Sha jogged along beside Yi Qing Luo as she looked up at her. The only lady who can barely match up to the Overlord is only Lord Demon Hall. It's normal for them to get married. Even if you go to Devil Head City, what can you do? No. Yi Qing Luo suddenly stopped in her tracks as she glanced sideways. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with Zhu Sha. Zhu Sha went into a blank. What? You're wrong. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips moved slightly as her words entered her ears clearly. In this world, the only person who can stand beside him can only be I. That clear voice was like an orchid. When Zhu Sha met her eyes, she was stunned. The words of persuasion were at the tip of its tongue, but it couldn't be said out. Just for a moment, it actually believed what she said. Will you lead the way? Yi Qing Luo asked. Zhu Sha lowered its pig head. Even if I lead the way, by the time you rush to Devil Head City, the wedding ceremony would have already ended. You won't be able to snatch the marriage. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her half-squinted eyes stared at it with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Her pink lips curled up into an arc, adding a hint of unspoken threat. If I didn't remember wrongly, when you charged towards me, that speed was much faster than ordinary magical beasts. Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. So be aware of it. Zhu Sha. I'm a human, not a pig. The last of the last. Yi Qing Luo sat on Zhu Sha's back as she charged out of the Devil Forest. Zhu Sha's body was covered with hedgehog-like fur, and it could be controlled with its will. When Yi Qing Luo was sitting on Zhu Sha's back, the hairs that looked like steel needles were actually extremely soft. Actually, it would be better if Cinnabar were to hide in the Death Devil Forest. After all, it still bore the reputation of being a sinner who stole Madame Huang Xi's devil flame flower. Once they appeared in the main city, he was afraid that Madame Huang Xi's subordinates would chase him relentlessly. It didn't matter if Cinnabar stole the demon flame flower or not, as long as it was related to the demonic flame flower. Even Zhu Sha had to take the blame for this and pay the price with her life. But Zhu Sha still followed beside Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Sha had a very strong intuition. Perhaps it was the intuition of a pig. As long as he followed this girl, its life would definitely undergo earth-shattering changes. He would die either way. Why not follow her and look for miracles? Zhu Sha's speed was indeed very fast. In just a short while, they had already left the Death Devil Forest. After leaving the forest, Yi Qing Luo noticed it. The houses in the demon domain were all similar to ancient castles. As far as the eye could see, it was filled with castles. Zhu Sha carried her on its back as it chose a secluded path to avoid the crowd. But it was still not enough. First, Madame Huang Xi's power. The guards who chased after them to the Death Devil Forest had yet to return. Madame's residence sent more people to wait outside the Death Devil Forest. Chapter 5063. They had just exited the Devil Forest for less than an hour's journey. Wuxia was blocked by a team of ferocious-looking Devil Domain people. Wuxia, I've not expected you to have such ability to escape from the fourth team. The Devil Domain people stared at Wuxia as they ridiculed, but even if you manage to escape from the fourth team, you will not be able to escape from our third team's palm. Wuxia was surrounded by that team and could only stop in her tracks. It lowered its voice as it explained to Yiqing Luo, Madame Huangxi's guards are split into 8 small teams and this man is the third team's team leader. Wuxia's voice became softer. The surrounding Devil Domain people were nearby and could hear it. The third team's team leader's vision fell onto Wuxia's back on the young lady. His eyes, which had thick eyeliner on them, revealed an evil smirk. That eyes were filled with a naked expression. Wuxia is not bad. You didn't forget to bring a woman along when escaping. The third team's team leader stared at Yiqing Luo as he sized her up. This woman looks not bad. He looked at Wuxia. Hand this woman over to me and I will leave your corpse in one piece. How about that? Third team leader, I didn't steal the magic flame flower. Wuxia's body tensed up as the porcupine hair stood up. But the place where Yiqing Luo was sitting was still soft. Wuxia's tone was infuriated. Let me see madam, I will explain to her personally. Want to see madam? The third team's team leader laughed coldly. You white-eyed pig, are you even fit to see madam? I have never betrayed madam. Wuxia's pig face flushed red from anger. But, so what? The third team's team leader's eyes gave a sinister smile. I said you stole it then? It's you. Wuxia went into a blank as his pig eyes widened. So it's you. The third team's team leader's thick eyeliner eyes curved into a slit as he grinned widely. Wuxia, as a demon pig, be a good pig. He suddenly charged towards Wuxia as he stretched out his hand to grab Yiqing Luo's shoulder. This woman, I will help you. Keep her. Third team leader, you don't touch her. Wuxia was so scared that its pig body trembled as it shrank backwards, trying to escape with Yiqing Luo. However, they were tightly surrounded by 3 teams of guards. The leader of the third team laughed sinisterly. Trash, you should act like trash. He lifted his leg and kicked Wuxia. And that sharp fingernails directly clasped onto Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Crack. There was the sound of bones breaking. What followed was the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Dust flew all over the ground. Wuxia kept her eyes tightly shut. However, the pain that he had imagined did not come. It was standing on the ground. Then, what was that thing that was thrown out just now? Cinnabar opened her eyes. He saw the leader of Team 3 lying on the ground in a sorry state, clutching his hand and screaming in pain. Wuxia was still a little confused. Then he heard the young man's ruthless voice from above him. Get lost. Every word he said was filled with boundless killing intent. The ragged and battered-looking girl jumped down from Wuxia's back. Pink dress, even though it was tattered. It was hard to conceal the young lady's innate noble temperament. Her narrow eyes fell onto the leader of Team 3. Call your madam over. Yiqing Luo's heart was burning with anxiety. She only wanted to run over to Devil Head City to save her Xian. She might not be able to make it in time. Now she was blocked by the third team's leader. Where would she have the patience to let him act cool? Chapter 5064. Who are you? The third team leader crawled up from the ground in pain as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yiqing Luo. Is madam someone whom you can meet whenever you want to? Yiqing Luo's eyes turned even colder. She lifted her feet and walked towards the third team leader. Her footsteps were slow and her tattered pink dress lifted the hem of her dress, like peach blossom petals flying in the air. She was obviously a young lady with no expression on her face. Even her footsteps were light. But the third team leader only felt that from the moment the young lady walked towards him. A strong oppressive feeling came rushing towards him, pressuring him so much that he almost couldn't breathe. It was this young lady who created this oppressive feeling. She was using her imposing manner to force him. The third team leader was able to become the third team leader, so naturally he wasn't a fool. Being arrogant in front of Wuxia. That was because Wuxia was someone he could casually play with. But this young lady was obviously not an ordinary person. The third team leader was so frightened that he retreated backwards, not daring to look at Yiqing Luo. The young lady's brows squinted slightly as her long and narrow eyes flashed with an eerie cold glint. The third team leader retreated. She closed in. Her voice was filled with an irresistible chill. I don't have much patience. I still have use for this pig now. If your first madam's residence insists on pestering me, then now. Let's settle this problem once and for all. Settling it directly was the fastest way. She didn't want to be stopped and chased away time and time again along the way. Although it might be faster if she changed to another mount. But this was Yi Qing Luo's first time coming to the Devil's Domain. Who knew where she would be able to find a mount? The Zhu, although it was timid and had a cheap mouth. But the good thing was that his character was not bad. At least when it mentioned Madame Huang Xi, its eyes were sparkling and filled with gratitude, which was absolutely not an act. So she had to settle the magic flame flower in the shortest time possible. Then she had to rush towards Devil Head City. The third team leader staggered as he fell onto the ground. The people from the Devil's Domain who were brought along immediately surrounded the third team leader. Yi Qing Luo condescendingly looked down at the third team leader. Or are you intending to? Bah. When the last word was said. In the young lady's hand, a gleaming sharp broadsword appeared. A slender and delicate young lady holding a broadsword. It looked extremely discordant. However, the girl's aura completely suppressed the evil aura of the broadsword. The faces of the leaders of the third team darkened and changed constantly. Where did Zhu find such a powerful helper? Miss, I advise you not to help that pig. It was the sinner who had stolen Madame's magic flame flower. If you help it, you'll be going against Madame. The leader of the third team still wanted to struggle. If you offend Madame, you will be hated by everyone in the infernal region. Are you sure? You still want to help Zhu? Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes lifted upwards slightly. Her pink lips were clearly curled into a smile. However, it exuded a chilling aura. It doesn't matter if it stole it or not. The important thing is, whether Madame believes it or not. Yi Qing Luo bent over slightly and closed the distance between her and the third team leader. So, let me see Madame. The leader of Team 3 shrunk back. At the moment when Yi Qing Luo bent down, a murderous look suddenly appeared in his eyes. He suddenly sprung up from the ground as he clawed towards Yi Qing Luo. Crack. Another crisp sound was heard. Following that was the third team leader's miserable shriek. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please collect it gently. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please collect it gently. Chapter 50-65. Once again he was sent flying out. This time he didn't have the energy to climb up. He laid on the ground, totally unable to move. Only his heavy panting proved that he was still alive. Yi Qing Luo retracted her leg and squinted her eyes as she glanced at him indifferently. There wasn't any warmth in her eyes. She carried her broadsword as she walked over directly. She raised her hand and was about to slash downwards. Spare him. A crisp voice was heard. Immediately after, an extremely majestic force flew towards him. Yi Qing Luo seemed to be prepared as she retracted her hand and took a step back, avoiding that force. The third team leader's eyes shone with a ray of hope when he heard that voice. He tried his best to raise his head as he looked towards the direction of the voice. Yi Qing Luo also retreated to a safe place as she crossed her arms and casually looked over, at the corner of a secluded path. First, a lady dressed in a plain brocade robe who looked like a servant girl walked out. Following that, a soft carriage with floating gauze entered everyone's eyes. The 4 people in the carriage were definitely not ordinary people. Their footsteps were steady, and even though they were carrying the carriage, they couldn't hear their footsteps. In the gauze, a slender figure could be seen indistinctly. When they saw that servant girl, the 3 teams of Devil Domain's people all revealed a joyous expression as they hurriedly shouted, Sister Hailan, Sister Hailan. Quickly save the third team leader. The servant girl and the carriage were all unhurriedly heading towards this side. When Zhu saw that side, its entire pig went into a daze. Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways at it. This is Madame Huang Xi, right? Zhu didn't reply, but the expression in that pair of pig eyes had already explained everything. Over there. The servant girl who was addressed as Hailan was already nearing the carriage. Finally it stopped at. The 3 teams were about 3 steps away. The carriage landed on the ground. The gauze floated. Hailan opened her mouth. This young lady, if there isn't any deep hatred, there's no need to take his life, right? Her tone was very calm. And without any intention to question. Yi Qing Luo calmly replied, if he hadn't blocked the way, I wouldn't have the time to deal with him. Her gaze looked directly towards the carriage. Is it Madame Huang Xi? Impudent. Hailan frowned and raised her voice. Miss, you hurt the guards of Madame's mansion and are still so rude. Do you think that Madame is kind and won't do anything to you? Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled slightly as she casually sneered. What you said is rather interesting. Only your Madame's guards are allowed to hurt people, but I'm not allowed to defend myself? If he's injured, it's because he's not as skilled as me. How can you blame me for not going easy on him? Not to mention, being rude? This is called rudeness. I'm afraid you haven't seen me being rude before. Madame Huang Xi was the faith of the Devil Phoenix continent. She did not want to become enemies with Madame Huang Xi. After all, he still wanted to go to Devil Head City to kidnap the bride. She wanted to have a proper discussion with Madame Huang Xi about the Devil Flame Flower. But that didn't mean that she had to lower her voice and comply with him. This was the first time Harlan had seen such an arrogant person. Before he could finish, a clear and elegant voice came from the carriage, interrupting Highland's words. Highland, back off. That elegant voice sounded soft and gentle, but the tone was filled with nobility and majesty. Highland immediately kept quiet as she retreated to the side of the carriage. The gauze was lifted by a fair hand. Following that, a graceful figure walked out. Chapter 5066. The lady was dressed in a dark blue pleated dress. There weren't many patterns, but the fabric and design was dignified. Just one look, she knew. The lady's status was respected. The minute she appeared, her vision fell onto Yi Qing Luo. That pair of gentle but not elegant beautiful eyes squinted slightly, as though she was examining Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo was also sizing her up. The lady in front of her looked very young, about 24 or 25 years old, but her age should be around 30. When she was looking at her, there wasn't any malicious intent in her eyes. Clear and moist, it wouldn't make one feel disgusted. Madame Huang Xi. Yi Qing Luo directly opened her mouth. The only thing that could make you come over personally is magic flame flower. Madame Huang Xi's eyes were gentle as she pouted her red lips. You already knew I was by your side. It wasn't a question but an affirmation. What Yi Qing Luo did to the third team leader. Actually, right from the start, she had never thought of taking the third team leader's life, but to force them out from the dark. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Since you know, then you should know the reason. She stretched out her hand and lifted the pig by her feet. Actually, you already knew that Zhu was framed, right? Madame Huang Xi took a look at Zhu. Her eyes were still gentle. Zhu is a good person, he knows how to repay kindness, so I believe him. Since that's the case, there's no problem. Yi Qing Luo said, withdraw the order to pursue Zhu. Don't let Madame's people pester us. Mississippi, Madame Huang Xi wasn't unhappy with Yi Qing Luo's attitude. She laughed lightly. No matter what, you have to give an explanation for the loss of the magic flame flower. Even if I believe Zhu, I still need evidence, isn't it? Madame Huang Xi's voice was calm and peaceful. He did not have the slightest hint of being high and mighty or imposing. It was like a very normal person saying normal things. Because of Zhu, Miss has already killed the fourth team leader and the other guards. She continued, there's a reason for this, and this matter isn't your responsibility, so Miss, please return Zhu back to Madame's residence. If you find any evidence, I will definitely protect Zhu. This Madame Huang Xi was something. First, he expressed his belief in Cinnabar, then he mentioned that he needed evidence. Then he pointed out her mistakes and used the excuse of not being calculative to make her feel guilty about it. Then he gave the cinnabar to Madame Huang Xi. Yi Qing Luo's curiosity was piqued. Zhu, this pig looked like a very ordinary demon pig. Even the demon pig that could transform into a human. But there was no need for Madame Huang Xi to appear personally, right? Could it be, what other secrets were hidden behind the cinnabar? Yi Qing Luo took a look at Zhu. The expression on Zhu's face was very complicated. Obviously, he understood Madame Huang Xi's intentions. Initially, when Madame Huang Xi said that she believed in it, it felt a little strange. He was still very excited. Then he heard the back part. The pig was dumbfounded. After all, Madame Huang Xi still did not believe it. Yi Qing Luo stared at Madame Huang Xi for some time and suddenly opened her mouth. Madame's countenance is outstanding and your temperament is outstanding, but your brows and eyes are green and, even if your lips are dyed with rouge, it is unable to conceal the dark green within. Her line of sight then fell onto Madame Huang Xi's waist. Although there's nothing unusual with Madame's walk, but her waist isn't straight, it should be due to the accumulation of poison in her body, exceeding the limits of her body. Chapter 5067. Does Madame Huang Ci feel short of breath every day, especially when you're walking? Your body and mind feel heavy, unable to move an inch? Following Yiqing Luo's words, Madame Huang Ci and Hai Lan's expressions had a subtle change. Until they heard the last sentence. Madame Huang Ci's pair of elegant eyes flashed past a sharp cold glint. It disappeared in a flash. She paused for a moment as her pupils contracted. Miss is a doctor? No, I'm just a pharmacist. Yiqing Luo smiled faintly. If Madame doesn't mind, I can help Madame to take a look at the accumulated poison in your body. Huang Ci Fu Rao's eyes flashed with a strange glint. Hai Lan frowned as he spoke in a low voice. Madame, you can't trust this lass. So many doctors and pharmacists are unable to do it, how could a lass like her do it? Madame Huang Ci muttered to herself for a moment before spitting out a word, all right. Madame. Hai Lan. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose as she smiled faintly. Of course I have a condition. Madame Huang Ci replied, if Miss is really able to resolve my fate for so many years, I will agree to any condition. Madame thinks too highly of me. Yiqing Luo shook her head. I'm not sure if I can completely resolve the poison in Madame's body. Before she could finish her words, Hai Lan had already cried out sharply, Madame, she's a liar. You must not use your own body as a joke, you can't trust her. Hai Lan. Huang Ci Fu Rao calmly glanced at Hai Lan, stopping his words. Her vision looked towards Yiqing Luo. Then what condition do you want to discuss with me? I can guarantee that you can at least live for a period of time. Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly as her voice was firm and decisive. Madame Huang Ci laughed lightly, her elegant temperament was like a blooming orchid. She asked, then what's your condition? I need cinnabar. Yiqing Luo replied. Cinnabar? Madame Huang Ci was slightly astonished. Why does Miss like cinnabar? Madame, because she's so daring, she actually wants to go to Devil Head City to kidnap the bride. Zhu Sha jumped next to Huang Ci Fu Rao and directly betrayed Yiqing Luo. She wants me to bring her to Devil Head City. Madame Huang Ci was slightly stunned. Bride kidnapping? She seemed to have come to a realization. 3 days from now, it will be the wedding ceremony of the Lord of the Devil Hall and Dizun, Great Rao. Are you thinking of snatching Dizun away? Zhu Sha nodded her pig head repeatedly. Madam, you also find it unbelievable, right? Why is she so stubborn to actually want to snatch a man from Lord Demon Palace? If you don't know how, then don't say anything. Yiqing Luo casted a glance at Zhu Sha. I can ask Madame Huang Ci for you and I can also abandon you. It's not that I can't do without you. She said, I'm going to kidnap the bride because I want a venerable sovereign. It has nothing to do with the demonic palace. What did he mean by snatching someone from the Devil Hall? Ashin was originally hers. She was merely returning the Devil Hall to its rightful owner. Madame Huang Ci looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. This girl was really too direct and bold. She had openly expressed her desire for the venerable sovereign's great mercy. This got out. He was afraid that something big would happen. Madame Huang Ci sighed softly. Miss, the venerable sovereign's great mercy is indeed the idol of all the ladies in the world. But 3 days later, the venerable sovereign is going to marry Lord Demon Palace, so you should give up. The young lady's long and narrow eyes curved into an arc at this instance, revealing a sharp glint. Marriage, have I agreed to it? Chapter 5068. The young girl, who was as pretty as a painting, clearly had the appearance of a girl next door, but at this moment she exuded a noble and gorgeous aura. It was a kind of innate nobility, a nobility that emanated from the bones. It was as if he stood above the 9 heavens and looked down on all living beings. Madame Huang Ci's heart skipped a beat. From the moment he saw this girl, Madame Huang Ci knew that this young lady was not as simple as she looked on the surface. Especially those eyes. It seemed to have gathered all the light in the world. Because of this, when the young girl vowed that she could detoxify the poison without the help of the demonic flame flower, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Somehow he wanted to believe her for once. And at this moment, looking at the girl's expression, she didn't seem to be joking at all. Perhaps, this girl and that Lord Dizun really had a relationship. This thought caused Madame Huang Ci's expression to change in an instant. She restrained her emotions and said, if you want to go to Devil Head City, why don't you come with me? She paused for a moment, then continued, I happen to be heading to Devil Head City to attend this wedding. If you follow me, we should be able to arrive before the wedding ceremony. In other words, if Yiqing Luo wanted to go to the wedding venue, If he followed her, he would be able to reach it. After all, it was the wedding ceremony of Lord Devil Hall and Lord Dizun. This was a big deal. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter the venue of the ceremony. Even if Yi Qing Luo reached Devil Head City, she still had to think of a way to enter the wedding ceremony. If he followed Madame Huang Xi, it would save him a lot of trouble. Yi Qing Luo didn't put on airs, then I'll have to trouble Madame. It's not troublesome at all, we're just taking what we need. Madame Huang Xi smiled elegantly, she had no intention of hiding her motive. This way it would be easier for them to work together. Only with a request could both parties achieve stability. The curtain fell on this farce. Zhu Sha was still a little confused. Why all of a sudden, did the beauty team up with Madame? Wouldn't he be useless then? Zhu Sha instantly shut herself up. Zhu Sha, why are you still standing there? The clear and melodious voice of a young girl entered Zhu Sha's ears. The young lady who had followed Madame Huang Xi far ahead was now looking at her. His tone was impatient. However, there was not the slightest impatience on his face. It blinked its pig eyes and immediately dashed towards Yi Qing Luo. Then she heard Madame Huang Xi say, Zhu Sha, his brain is not very bright. How did Miss fall for him? Yes, he is indeed a bit stupid. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Who asked me to only meet this pig in the Devil Forest, so I can only reluctantly accept it. Zhu Sha. Piercing to the heart. It wasn't just this girl who disliked him. Even Madame Huang Xi despised him. If you need a mount, I can arrange it for you, Madame Huang Xi said. Zhu Sha's pig eyes widened as his little eyes looked at Yi Qing Luo nervously. If she wanted to replace him, he would definitely be treated as the criminal who stole the Devil Flame Flower and be locked up. Just as Madame said, Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. Zhu Sha is a good one and knows how to repay kindness. Rather than having a mount whose background I don't know, why not let it follow me at least? It's trustworthy. Zhu Sha was instantly moved to tears. Then it heard the girl's next words, forcing its tears back. She said, moreover, if you're hungry on the way, you can eat a roasted pig or something. Zhu Sha. Till now, she still hadn't forgotten to roast him. He wasn't a pig. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5069. Madame's Residence. Yi Qing Luo was treated as a VIP and was placed in the courtyard next to Madame Huang Xi's. She even specially assigned a few maids to wait on her. Yi Qing Luo directly rejected them. She only wanted the cinnabar and a young lass who knew about medicine, Hai Tang. After all, they were taking what they needed. Moreover, the other party was the first madam with great authority. If she didn't show some sincerity, there would be some friction in this cooperation. After she had settled down, Yi Qing Luo directly checked Madame Huang Xi's pulse. After a round of trouble, she made another list of medicinal herbs and asked Hai Tang to take it. Madame Huang Xi was extremely cooperative. Hai Lan tried to dissuade her several times but was stopped by Madame Huang Xi's gaze. Madame Huang Xi's poison was indeed like what the cinnabar said. It had settled in her body and after a long time, it had completely seeped into her bone marrow. Even if she used the method of detoxification to expel the remaining poison, it was of no use. Furthermore, what made Yi Qing Luo astonished was, she had no clue about Madame Huang Xi's poison. This was the first time she met with a poison which she couldn't resolve. Yi Qing Luo was busy over here. Madame's residence was in an uproar. No one believed it. Based on Yi Qing Luo's age, how could she possibly cure Madame's body? The Devil Region's doctors, pharmacists, even the Devil Region's #1 Devil Doctor were all helpless against Madame's poison. What could a young lady do? Not to mention there were quite a number of doctors from the outside world who were also helpless. Where did this young lady get her confidence from? She was simply a liar. But unfortunately, that young lady seemed to have bewitched their madam. Or could it be? Madame had already given up hope and wanted to give it a try if there was a chance. Anyway, she allowed that young lady to do whatever she wanted. And she was extremely cooperative. All the maids and servants in Madame's residence were frightened out of their wits. After Hai Tang had collected all the medicinal herbs, Yi Qing Luo directly asked someone to throw all the medicinal herbs into a bathtub and asked them to boil a few buckets of hot water. Following that, she asked Madame Huang Xi to go into the inner hall to perform acupuncture. The minute she heard acupuncture, Hai Lan couldn't sit still. Madam, this young lady? This is just the first time you've met her, this is really not right. At the very least, he had to give them a chance to investigate the young lady's identity. Yiqing Luo didn't have much emotions as she looked at Madame Huang Ci and said, "If Madame doesn't believe me, then it's not that I didn't fulfill the requirements of our transaction." A person of Madame Huang Ci's status. Even if he didn't trust her, it was normal. Yiqing Luo had no intention to get angry. She put away the silver needles and said faintly, "Then go directly to the medicinal bath." "No problem." Madame Huang Ci smiled and shook her head, "I'll listen to misarrangements." Madame Huang Ci had already said so. No matter how anxious Harland was, she did not dare to stop him. In the inner hall, Yiqing Luo speedily performed acupuncture on Madame Huang Ci. The silver needles she used were all special silver needles that she had refined together with her teacher, the ghost doctor, in the Nirvana realm. When the silver needle pierced Madame Huang Ci's skin, the silver needle instantly turned black. Yiqing Luo's eyes congealed slightly. "Madam, the poison in your body?" She hesitated for a moment before continuing, "It doesn't seem like it's just the residual poison that's accumulated in her body. Don't overdo it." Yiqing Luo didn't continue speaking. Based on Madame Huang Ci's intelligence, naturally he understood the underlying meaning in Yiqing Luo's words. Not only the residual poison. This meant that there were other poisons in Madame Huang Ci's body. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 50-70. Moreover, it wasn't the poison in Jiuyu's body. Rather, it was a recent poison. When Madame Huang Ci heard this, there was no surprise on her face. She slightly lowered her eyes and chuckled softly, "I've let you see a joke." Yiqing Luo shook her head. While swiftly applying the needles, she said lightly, "You and I are strangers before today, it's not to the extent of being a joke." After inserting the last needle into the acupoint, she withdrew her hand and continued, "But, you should have noticed it long ago." Madame Huang Ci closed her beautiful eyes slightly. When those silver needles pierced into her acupoints, it was actually very painful. However, her expression didn't change at all, as though she was already used to such pain. However, between her brows, there was an unresolvable melancholy. It made her beautiful face look even more charming and pitiful. She was the first lady who was in a high position and had great power. Actually, it wasn't as enviable as he had imagined. Madame Huang Ci laughed softly, "From the matter of the devil flame flower being stolen, I can roughly guess it." She lowered her eyes and the melancholy in her eyes deepened. "But, I still don't want to believe it." Yiqing Luo didn't say much. This was Madame Huang Ci's personal matter. It was not convenient for her to ask further. "Wait for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, then Madame can directly soak in the medicinal bath." Yiqing Luo stood up and walked to the side of the bathtub. The bathtub was custom-made with special silver equipment. The boiling water gave off a white mist. On the side there was a long table with all kinds of medicinal herbs. Yiqing Luo followed the order and placed the medicinal herbs into the bathtub in an orderly manner. Watching the clear water gradually turn turbid. A rich medicinal fragrance pervaded the entire room. Madame Huang Ci tilted her head slightly and looked at the young lady who had a calm expression and was doing her work seriously. In her beautiful eyes, there seemed to be some distant thoughts spreading out. He didn't know if it was because of the herbs, or if the girl had used some other method. When the herbs fell into the bathtub, the water was originally boiling hot. It instantly boiled over. Wave after wave rolled forward. Listening to the gurgling sound of the water, his nose was filled with the strong and bitter smell of medicine. Madame Huang Ci's heart gradually calmed down. She glanced sideways at Yiqing Luo as she spoke out in a low voice, "Miss, you say, how much longer do I have left to live?" "It depends on you whether you want to live or not." Yiqing Luo replied indifferently. "Heh." Madame Huang Ci snorted and closed her eyes again. "Yes, it depends on whether I want to live or not." She said nothing more. Yiqing Luo didn't say anything. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Yiqing Luo pulled out all the black silver needles and placed them into the medicine box that she had prepared earlier. "Madam, soak for 4 hours and you can get up." After she finished speaking, she left the room. Inside the medicine box was a medicinal solution that was specially used to decompose toxins. The silver needles were filled with Madame Huang Ci's poison. She took the opportunity to study what kind of poison it was. Back at the courtyard, Yiqing Luo headed straight into the room and started researching. Zhu Xiao looked at Yiqing Luo's busy figure as she mumbled softly, "Aren't you in a hurry to snatch the bride from Devil Head City?" Although If you follow Madame Huang Ci, you can use the magic ship to reach Devil Head City on the same day, but you should at least be anxious. Haitang pulled Zhu Sha back. Miss Mu is also thinking for Madame's health. Since Madame has agreed to let her reach the membrane vegetables earlier, then she will definitely be able to reach there. Her voice wasn't soft when she said this. Apparently, she specially said it out for Yiqing Luo to hear. Chapter 5071. Her motive was to hope that Yiqing Luo would try her best to help Madame Huang Ci resolve the poison. Since Madame Huang Ci chose to believe in Yiqing Luo, now, everyone in Madame's residence could only place their hopes on Yiqing Luo. Outside the door, Zhu Sha and Haitang's conversation. Yiqing Luo heard it all. His fingers that were holding the silver needle tightened a little. Devil Head City. She naturally wanted to rush over to Devil Head City to look for Ah Xian. Her Ah Xian. She wanted to find out the truth. How did the news of Lord Demon Hall and Overlord's marriage spread out? She was most worried about. Had something happened to Ah Xian? She believed in Ah Xian, and absolutely believed in the relationship between them. But this matter, since this news had happened, there must be a reason behind it. No matter how anxious he was, he could not help it. Right now, she could only wait for Madame Huang Ci to head over to Devil Head City together. But before this, she must gain Madame Huang Ci's trust. Based on Madame Huang Ci's status and power in the Devil Domain, with Madame Huang Ci's help, after entering Devil Head City, it would be more convenient. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath as she cast aside all the messy thoughts in her mind. She must be serious and concentrate on researching the composition of this poison. 4 hours later, Yiqing Luo was still buried in the table full of bottles and jars. Suddenly she heard 2 hurried footsteps coming from outside the courtyard. Before the person arrived, the voice was heard, Miss, this medicinal bath of yours is too magical." The usually graceful and elegant Madame Huang Ci's eyes were sparkling as she walked into the room quickly. She was only wearing a simple single piece of clothing. Her wet hair was scattered behind her as it wet her robe, but she didn't mind it at all. She walked into the room and her vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. "Miss, I feel refreshed now, my body is light as a feather, without any pain at all." She spoke very quickly as she was extremely agitated. A pair of beautiful eyes that were as elegant as orchids were filled with a joyful smile. Hailan, who was by the side, was supporting Madame Huang Ci as she looked at Yiqing Luo with a strange expression. But when Yiqing Luo looked at her, Hailan's eyes turned red as she said, "Miss Mu, it's all thanks to you." After the two entered the room, Harland immediately closed the door. She said, "Ever since Madame forcefully suppressed the poison, her body has been deteriorating day by day. Now, it's almost impossible for her to move. But Madame is the Madame of the Demon Phoenix continent. Her existence is the hope of the Demon Phoenix continent. She cannot let others know that her body is about to wither. Whenever she appears in front of outsiders, she has to endure great pain to make herself appear normal." But today, Hailan knelt on the ground with a plop. "Thank you, Miss Mu, thank you, Miss Mu." When Yiqing Luo heard Hailan's words, there wasn't much change in her expression. She allowed Hailan to kneel on the ground and turned her gaze towards Madame Huang Ci. Madame Huang Ci, who just came out of the medicinal bath, looked refreshed. Her beautiful and elegant face was stained with a healthy blush. The space between his brows wasn't as dark as before. His body also straightened up a lot, although it was not a complete recovery. But compared to her previous state, it was much better than he had expected. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a smile. In the future, soak for 4 to 6 hours according to the prescription every day. Chapter 5072. Madame Huang Ci's eyes were filled with agitation as she clenched her fists tightly. "Miss, if you have any requests, just tell me. I will do my best to get it done for you." Yiqing Luo looked at Madame Huang Ci's smiling face. It looked like, in Madame Huang Ci's heart, she already had the answer she wanted. Who didn't want to continue living? But previously, there was no hope at all, and she had to shoulder the entire Devil Phoenix continent's hope. She gave hope to so many people. But who could support her hope? So Madame Huang Ci was very tired. Adding on the pain of the poison corroding her body. She couldn't bear it. But now, Yiqing Luo gave her hope. The hope to live on. When hope came, how could she not want to hold on to it? Facing Madame Huang Ci's words, Yiqing Luo didn't stand on ceremony as she calmly nodded her head. "I hope Madame will remember what you said today. When we reach Devil Head City, I will definitely need to trouble Madame Huang Ci for something. Madame Huang Ci's brows were filled with a smile. Even if Miss really wants to snatch the bride, I will not refuse. Madam? When Hai Lan heard this, she immediately spoke out softly. She was still kneeling on the ground and was completely ignored by Yiqing Luo. At this moment she couldn't help but open her mouth. That is... Devil Lord. If Madame Huang Ci wanted to help this young lady snatch the bride, then she would definitely offend. Devil Lord. She took a look at Yiqing Luo and carefully looked at Madame Huang Ci. Madam, although Miss Mu can cure you, but... Devil Phoenix Continent's current situation is already in a precarious situation. If you offend Devil Lord at this moment, I'm afraid it will be disadvantageous to Madam. Hai Lan's tone was heavy, filled with worry for Madame Huang Ci. I didn't say that I can cure Madam. Yiqing Luo interrupted Hai Lan's words. Her slender eyes rose slightly as she looked at Hai Lan faintly. The medicinal bath is only using medicinal herbs to expel the remaining poison in Madam's body. But there are simply too many poison in Madam's body. This method can only alleviate Madam's pain but not the root cause. Since you can't save the Madam, why should the Madam offend the Lord of the Demonic Palace for you? Hai Lan suddenly stood up from the ground, gritted her teeth and angrily rebuked. Yiqing Luo sneered, this maidservant of yours is really strange. I've said it from the start, it can only be delayed, not cured. Furthermore, she paused for a moment and changed the topic. When did I ask Madam to offend the Devil Lord for me? Indeed, the young girl didn't say anything. However, she had made a request with the help of Madam's kindness. Wasn't it because she wanted Madam to help her snatch Dizun from Lord Devil Hall? Harland. Madame Huang Ci's brows sunk slightly as she glanced at her coldly. Looks like this Madam has been spoiling you too much, to have developed such a rude character. Madame Huang Ci's voice was not considered strict, but it was filled with authority, causing Hai Lan's body to stiffen. Immediately, his legs went soft and he knelt on the ground. Scram. Go to the woodshed and burn for 2 days. Think about what you should do as a servant. Madame Huang Ci ordered coldly. Hai Lan still wanted to plead for leniency. But when she met Madame Huang Ci's icy cold beautiful eyes, all her words were stuck in her throat. In the end, she knelt on the ground aggrievedly as her voice trembled slightly. This servant accepts punishment. 7th Miss who likes trash. Dizun, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss who likes trash. Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5073. Finishing her words, Hai Lan walked step by step towards the door. Taking one step, stopping one step at a time. Extremely slow. As though she was waiting for Madame Huang Ci to call her back. But until she walked out of the room, Madame Huang Ci didn't say a word. After that, the room door slowly closed. Hai Lan's slender fingers clenched tightly as the expression on her face was covered with a layer of haze. She lowered her head as her peripheral vision swept past the tightly shut room door. In her eyes, there was a faintly discernible murderous intent spreading. But it was fleeting. She lowered her head as she left the courtyard. In the room, Yiqing Luo pulled a redwood chair over as she sat down on another table with a tea set. Looks like Madam isn't that stupid. This sentence was indeed disrespectful. But Madame Huang Ci wasn't angry at all as she sat down in front of Yiqing Luo with a smile. In Mrs. Eyes, am I very stupid? You can say so. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Treating someone who harbors ill intentions as your confidant is indeed quite stupid. Madame Huang Ci's brows drooped as she gave a bitter laugh. That's right. I originally thought that she would be the person I trust the most in this lifetime, unfortunately. If it wasn't someone who was close to her. Who else could do it without making a sound? What if he poisoned her? But now there was a Sunset Rain, who could actually detoxify her. Instantly she panicked. That was why, under the influence of a few sentences, she hurriedly exposed her motive. Ever since Madame Huang Ci's poison became more and more intense, almost emptying her body, all her affairs were handled by Hai Lan. Only when there were big matters would be passed to her. And she was already used to Hai Lan's service and care. But unknowingly, she let Hai Lan take charge of her life. Yiqing Luo poured a cup of tea as she pushed it in front of Madame Huang Ci. Soak in the medicinal bath first. I will think of a way to research on the antidote. But everything will have to wait till I go to Devil Head City to investigate clearly before I can help you. Madame Huang Ci smiled slightly. I'm not in a hurry, I've already waited for so many years, a little more time doesn't matter. Her hand gently touched her face as her eyes sparkled brightly, as though it was starry. Now, is already very good. I don't know how long it has been. I haven't been so relaxed. Her eyes were filled with warmth. She raised her eyes and looked at Yiqing Luo resolutely. Muyu, my life is saved by you. If there's anything you need help with, I will help you. The two looked at each other and smiled. This Madame Huang Xi was indeed an intelligent person. He also knew how to make the most suitable decision. From the moment she chose to believe in Yiqing Luo, he chose to believe everything that Yiqing Luo said. She had this kind of noble and elegant aura that seemed to look down on all living things. Since he had decided to go to Devil Head City to kidnap the bride, it must be because there was a story between her and Dizun. To be able to make such a haughty and arrogant young lady travel thousands of miles to Devil Head City. This was definitely not, it was all because of his infatuation with Dizun. The next morning, Madame Huang Xi's troops were ready to depart. By the time Yiqing Luo woke up, Zhu Sha led her to the open-air garden of the Madame's residence. Yiqing Luo saw a huge sail in the middle of the garden. That ship was astonishingly huge. It was 2 stories high. It looked noble and luxurious. A flag was raised high up in the sky. Under the complicated totem symbol, there was a huge phoenix word in flamboyant calligraphy. Zhu Sha saw Yiqing Luo staring at the ship and explained, "This is our transportation tool, the magic ship. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5074. However, only people with status and identity in the demon domain can own a demon ship. Also, according to the level of status, the size of the devil ship and the degree of delicacy are all different. Zhu Sha's tone was filled with pride. The demonic ship has a special passage. If I were to bring you along, we might be able to rush to Devil Head City now. The wedding ceremony is about to end. But if it's Madame's demonic ship, we can reach Devil Head City in the afternoon. Yiqing Luo nodded as her eyes were filled with astonishment. He didn't expect that the infernal domain already had such a transportation tool. In the outside world, people were still using magical beasts, mounts and so on. Yiqing Luo was engrossed in it. She heard an elegant voice coming from behind her. "If you like it, I can order someone to build you a demonic ship after we return from Devil Head City." Yiqing Luo turned back. She saw Madame Huang Xi, who was dressed in an emerald dress and looked like a fairy, walking towards her. Beside Madame Huang Xi, Hailan was no longer there. Instead, there was another slightly older woman. Yiqing Luo carefully sized up Madame Huang Xi. She looked relaxed and her complexion was very good. Apparently he had slept well last night. "That's not necessary." Yiqing Luo laughed lightly as she replied immodestly, "If there's a need, I'll directly borrow from you. Isn't that more convenient?" "You sure have a good plan." Madame Huang Xi couldn't help but laugh. "Alright, if you need anything just let me know." Yiqing Luo followed Madame Huang Xi as she boarded the magic ship. The interior of the demonic ship was extremely luxurious and exquisite. When Yiqing Luo stepped into the boat, she felt as though she was sitting on a luxurious yacht. This ship took the heavenly road, not the waterway. When Yiqing Luo and Madame Huang Xi were seated, the demonic ship soared into the sky. The ship sailed steadily. The journey took about 6 hours. Zhu Sha then led Yiqing Luo to a room to rest. 6 hours later, Yiqing Luo sat on the outer perimeter of the magic ship, looking at the majestic castles in front of her and the endless stream of horses and carriages. It looked like a medieval castle in Europe. Moreover, under the gloomy atmosphere of the infernal domain, it added a mysterious and unfathomable sense of malevolence. The castles were all hung with red satin, and the double happiness posters were spread all over the city. It added a bit of joy to this majestic and solemn city. Zhu Sha rubbed her head against Ji Yunshu's leg excitedly. "We're here. This is Devil Head City, this is Devil Head City." Then he poked his head out and looked around. "Look, the whole city is pasted with double happiness. It seems like Lord Demonic Hall really cares about this wedding ceremony. How much manpower, material and financial resources will this take? Lord Devil Palace is really willing to spend a fortune for Lord Dizun to win his smile." As he spoke, Zhu Sha suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. All the hedgehog hairs on his body stood up. Its body stiffened as if it had realized something, and it turned its head to its side. The young girl with black hair and peach-colored clothes slightly raised her pink lips. She looked at him quietly with her long and enchanting eyes. Looking and looking, Zhu Sha felt as if she was being strangled by fate, unable to breathe. He immediately changed his words. Lord Demonic Hall is so extravagant and wasteful, it's simply rotten. What you mean is, my Dizun is not worthy of all these? The young girl narrowed her eyes as her tone was dangerous. Zhu Sha's entire body turned cold. Worthy? Then what you mean is, that Demonic Hall has the right to win my Dizun's smile? The young girl once again sent out an interrogation from her soul. Zhu Sha. He couldn't help but slap his own mouth with his hoof. Who asked you to have such a cheap mouth? Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with my love. Chapter 5075. If you don't know how to speak, then shut your pig mouth. Yiqing Luo glanced at him coldly. Although her words were spoken lightly. But when the young lady shifted her gaze away, looking at the surrounding majestic castle, her pretty face, which was as pretty as a painting, was still a little bit solemn, which was hard to detect. Under the wide peach blossom robe, the young lady's fingers were clenched tightly. It showed that right now her heart was not at ease. A Xian. Right in this main city. If she saw him, she must throw a tantrum with him. He actually dared to abandon her, running over to meet this whatever devil hall. And even creating the news of marriage with the devil hall. Even if it was fake. This debt must be settled. Yiqing Luo's mind was filled with different thoughts. She didn't discover. Not too long after the devil ship sailed into Devil Head City. Not too far away in a devil ship, a pair of treacherous sinister eyes stared unblinkingly at the direction of Madame Huang Xi's devil ship. Just as Yiqing Luo sensed something amiss, she raised her eyes and looked over. A bam sound was heard. The devil ships collided. The two devil ships were jolted to a halt in midair. What happened? Madame Huang Xi's voice was heard from the devil ship. Madame, our ship has collided with Jiang family's devil ship. The person operating the devil ship replied. Jiang family? Madame Huang Xi frowned slightly. What's the meaning of Jiang family colliding with my devil ship? Let's go out and take a look. While at this moment, Yiqing Luo, who was standing outside the devil ship, suffered the greatest impact. She didn't know if it was her misperception. When that devil search ship collided, it intentionally collided towards the direction where she was standing. Yiqing Luo retreated a few steps from the impact. Luckily Zhu Sha reacted in time, using her body to block Yiqing Luo, allowing her to regain her footing. Yiqing Luo's slender brows congealed slightly as she looked towards the devil ship in front. She saw a young lady dressed in a bright and colorful skirt, looking at her provocatively. The young lady was around 16 to 17 years old and looked rather good. But at the instance when Yiqing Luo looked over, the expression on the woman's face had already been replaced by panic. She quickly walked to the edge of the demonic ship and said in a soft voice, Madam, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I had to pester the captain and wanted to try controlling the ship. That's why I accidentally bumped into you. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed as she glanced sideways at her back. He realized that Madame Huang Xi had already walked out. She sized up the woman in front of her with interest. Interesting. A woman who was possessed by a drama queen was truly incredible. Miss Jiang. Madame Huang Xi's expression was cold as she looked at the woman in front of her in a dignified manner. This is Devil Head City, even if you want to play around, you should know the situation. The woman immediately lowered her head and obediently admitted her mistake. Shuang knows her mistake. Shuang will definitely not cause trouble again. This junior is so obedient, and his attitude of admitting his mistake is also good. No matter what, Madame Huang Xi could not hold on to it. But when Madame Huang Xi just walked out from the boat, she saw Yiqing Luo flying out from the aftershocks of the collision. If it wasn't for Cinnabar, the young girl's small body would probably be heavily injured. If she wanted an explanation for Muyu, if this spread out, then it would mean that Madame Huang Xi was unforgiving, making things difficult for a junior. But if she just let it go like this, Muyu's grievance, who would shoulder it? Just as she was thinking about how to choose. The young lady dressed in peach blossom robe curled her pink lips as her voice was gentle. Since you know you're in the wrong, then let it go. Madame Huang Xi looked at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo gave her a gentle smile, and after that, her vision looked towards the woman on the demonic ship as her lips curled up indifferently. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5076. But eldest Miss Jiang? The young girl's voice was still soft and gentle, but the words that came out of her mouth were incomparably sharp. If you are stupid, then don't come out and make a fool of yourself. Not everyone is as kind-hearted as Madam. Just a few words of, I know I'm wrong, and I'm sorry, will make her forgive your stupidity. We are not your mother, we have no obligation to tolerate your stupidity. You. Jiang Shuang'er's eyes widened in anger as her jade finger pointed at Yiqing Luo. What thing are you? How dare you insult me? Yiqing Luo casually used a look like she was sizing up goods as she scanned Jiang Shuang'er from head to toe. To tell the truth, eldest Miss Jiang doesn't like to hear it? You slut. Jiang Shuang'er suddenly leapt up and leapt onto Madame Huangxi's magic ship. Yiqing Luo noticed that when Jiang Shuang'er leapt over, an extremely oppressive energy was emitting from her body. That energy didn't seem like profound energy, but it felt the same as profound energy. In the air there were layers of ripples, following which it spread towards her. The feeling of danger approaching made Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly. This was the magic that was used in the magic region? It was equivalent to their profound energy, it was the same logic. Only there was a slight difference. The incoming magic qi brought along an undetectable killing intent. Yiqing Luo's slender brows knitted tightly as a glint of astonishment flashed past her eyes. She and this eldest Miss Jiang had no enmity, and this was the first time they met. Why? It seemed that the eldest Miss Jiang had come for her? Colliding with the ship was the same. And it was the same now. As though she couldn't wait to kill her. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to take out her broadsword, a soft hand was placed on her arm. Following that, she was pulled back by a few steps. A slender figure stood in front of her. Madame Huangxi waved her sleeves as she blocked the incoming magic qi. Eldest Miss Jiang. Madame Huangxi's tone was tainted with a tinge of anger. Miss Mu is on my ship, so she is my esteemed guest. Eldest Miss Jiang jumped onto my magic ship without any explanation and attacked my esteemed guest. What logic is this? Her tone was filled with aggressiveness. How could the young Jiang Shuang'er withstand such an imposing demeanor without being angry? Jiang Shuang'er's face suddenly turned pale. The demonic power backfired, causing her to lean against the edge of the boat. Madam, it's her. She humiliated me. You were the one who crashed into the ship first. Do you think you're in the right? Madame Huangxi snorted. So this is how the Jiang family teaches their daughter. This madam would like to seek guidance from Madame Jiang. Madame Shuang'er knows his wrongs. When she heard that her parents were involved, Jiang Shuang'er was so scared that she fell to the ground. Shuang'er was just angry and couldn't think straight. In terms of power and status, the status of the First Lady was much higher than that of the Jiang family. However, the news of Madame Huangxi being poisoned had caused her prestige to be greatly reduced. But this does not mean. How could the First Lady tolerate other families stepping on her head? Madame Huangxi sneered as she looked at the opposite magic ship. Bring your young miss back and help me pass a message to your mistress. I will pay you a visit in a few days. Saying that, she didn't care about Jiang Shuang'er's grievances and her submissive tone. Madame Huangxi didn't bother about it as she pulled Yiqing Luo's wrist. Miss, let's go in. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5077. Yiqing Luo followed Madame Huangxi into the ship and turned back to take a look at Jiang Shuang'er, but it met the vicious haze in the lady's eyes. She frowned. How is this eldest Miss Jiang's reputation in the Devil region? Madame Huangxi shook her head. Hai Yun, who was standing beside her, said, Eldest Miss Jiang's reputation is not bad. She is well educated and her innate talent is very high. She is able to stand firm in the Jiang family. This was the reputation on the surface. She paused for a moment and continued, but eldest Miss Jiang is after all Castle Lord Jiang's daughter, so the outside world will give Castle Lord Jiang some face. From what I understand, this eldest Miss Jiang was raised in a pampered manner and her temper is very bad. Bad temper, I can tell. Yiqing Luo was more curious about. Why did Jiang Shuang'er have enmity towards her? She didn't seem to know anyone in this devil domain, right? This inexplicable hostility was truly unfathomable. If that Jiang Shuang'er comes to find trouble with you, tell me. Madame Huangxi patted her hand. Yiqing Luo smiled and nodded. This interlude ended just like that. But enemies were bound to meet. The devil ship stopped at the place where Devilhead City docked specially for devil ships. Yiqing Luo and the rest just walked out of the hall. Jiang Shuanger and the rest happened to walk out of the hall. Just like that. They met on a narrow path. Jiang Shuanger stared at Yiqing Luo as she bit her cherry lips. But she was a little afraid of Madame Huang Xi, so she could only control her temper. She pinched her fingers as her eyes turned red from the pain and walked towards Madame Huang Xi in quick steps. Madam? I'm really sorry earlier, Shuanger shouldn't be so rash. Her voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. Now was the eve of Lord Demon Hall and Overlord's wedding. The Devil Ship's hall was filled with people from various continents in the Devil region. When he saw this scene, he immediately turned his gaze over. Jiang Shuanger's eyes were red as she crossed her hands and bowed towards Madame Huang Xi. Madame is magnanimous and forgive Shuanger's rash actions. Shuanger will definitely turn over a new leaf. As she said that, her voice started to choke. From this look, it seemed as though Madame Huang Xi was bullying a young lady. This was probably Jiang Shuanger's purpose. Madame Huang Xi's expression was slightly cold. Her beautiful and elegant face was covered with a layer of coldness. Eldest Miss Jiang, I have already said what I should say. What is the meaning of this? Madame's health isn't good. Shuanger doesn't want to make Madame angry. Jiang Shuanger sniffed aggrievedly. Shuanger made Madame unhappy just now. Shuanger has always felt guilty. Shuanger just hopes that Madame won't harm your health because of Shuanger. She pursed her lips and looked at Madame Huang Xi with an aggrieved expression. Madame Huang Xi, I'm sorry. Saying that, she knelt down in front of Madame Huang Xi. He cried, threw a tantrum and knelt down. How would others view Madame Huang Xi? Madame Huang Xi did not expect Jiang Shuanger to make such a move. She frowned. Miss Jiang, what are you doing? When did I say that I would be angry because of you? But. Jiang Shuanger bit her lower lip, her voice trembling. The surrounding people all had different looks in their eyes as they stared at them and discussed in low voices. After all, no matter what race, gossip was human nature. Moreover, it was gossip about the First Lady. They must eat melons. Hai Yun took Madame Huang Xi's arm and calmed her down. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5078. Madame Huang Xi looked at the lady who was kneeling in front of her. Her eyes were misty with tears as though she had been wronged. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. She looked at Jiang Shuanger indifferently and was about to speak. Suddenly, a fair and soft little hand blocked in front of her. After that, she saw a peach-robed young lady slowly walking towards Jiang Shuanger. Just like that, she stood arrogantly in front of Jiang Shuanger. The person who Jiang Shuanger was kneeling on had become Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo looked down at Jiang Shuanger from above, with her eyelids raised, with a sense of nobility. Jiang Shuanger's words were all stuck in her throat. She raised her head and looked at the young lady in front of her, as her cheeks instantly turned hot. This slut. She actually made her kneel on her knees. She wanted to stand up. But the surrounding were all onlookers. If she stood up, the plan would have failed. Jiang Shuanger was so angry that she kept cursing in her heart. However, the young girl with black hair and peach-colored clothes was smiling brightly. Like a blooming flower, in full bloom with a dazzling charm. Her pink lips curled as she looked at Jiang Shuanger indifferently. I'm afraid the person eldest Miss Jiang is apologizing to is the wrong person? She straightened her body and crossed her arms. Her posture was disdainful and a little lazy. The person you almost hurt is me. The person you almost killed is also me. Madame saw that I have no power and could only let you, the eldest miss of the Jiang family, bully me, so she became the embodiment of justice and stood out to say a few words for me. Whether or not to forgive you, I should be the one asking. How did it come out from eldest Miss Jiang's mouth? It became, Madame is not willing to forgive you? The young lady's words were clear and her voice was clear. Just a few sentences and she had directly removed Madame Huang Xi from the picture. It became a dispute between the two young people. You, what nonsense are you talking about? Why would I kill you? Jiang Shuanger didn't expect Yiqing Luo to stand out at this moment. She stuttered and immediately denied, I just want to apologize for my earlier actions. If you want to apologize, it means that you know that you were wrong when you tried to kill me with the demonic ship. Yiqing Luo directly snatched over Jiang Shuanger's words, the person who almost died because of your mischief was me, so You should apologize to me, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Jiang Shuanger's eyes reddened. The surrounding people were stunned when they heard this. The eldest miss of the Jiang family actually used a demonic ship to ram people? It was no wonder that the lady was so angry. Those who originally felt sorry for Jiang Shuanger and whispered that Madame Huang Xi was unforgiving had changed their tune. Jiang Shuanger had never experienced such humiliation before. Her face turned red and it took her a long time to say, "Aren't you fine? Didn't I apologize too? Why don't you let me go?" "Oh, I'm fine, so you're not wrong, right? If something happens to me, does that mean I deserve it?" Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Her smile was bright and beautiful, but there wasn't a trace of emotion in her eyes. "Your apology doesn't mean that I must accept it. Also, if you want to apologize, figure out who you're apologizing to and show your sincerity. Instead of an apology is used by you to put on a show, trying to make use of the innocent crowd to clear your name, and then help you to force Madame Huang Xi to forgive you?" The young lady's words were sharp and forceful. So sharp that Jiang Shuanger's eyes turned red and her face flushed red. After saying these words, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly. "I don't really want to forgive you, so since you're so guilty, then continue to kneel here." Chapter 5079. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled up even more, her long and narrow eyes curved into a cold arc. "Who knows, after kneeling for a long time, I might choose to forgive you," she said. "Miss Jiang, you feel guilty so easily. I guess you won't be willing to get up without my forgiveness, right?" Jiang Shuanger. What an aggrieved feeling. The young girl was very direct. She used her previous words to rebuke her. How could she say no? But was she really going to kneel until the girl forgave her? If he really did that. She was afraid that she, Jiang Shuanger, would be a joke in Devil Head City. Jiang Shuanger clenched her fists tightly as her bright red eyes stared unblinkingly at Yi Qing Luo. In the eyes of outsiders, Jiang Shuanger seemed as though she was shocked by Yi Qing Luo's words, as she couldn't believe it and was extremely astonished. But Yi Qing Luo and Jiang Shuanger's eyes met. He could clearly see the warning and anger in the man's eyes. Then Jiang Shuanger's eyelids rolled and she fell back weakly. Eldest miss, eldest miss. The maidservants of the Jiang family immediately helped Jiang Shuanger up and called out to her in panic. However, Jiang Shuanger kept her eyes closed and remained motionless. Then, after a period of chaos, Jiang Shuanger was carried out of the hall of the demonic ship by the people of the Jiang family. Yi Qing Luo, she felt like laughing. "Let's go." Madame Huang Xi patted Yi Qing Luo's shoulder lightly and then gazed towards the direction where Jiang Shuanger and the others had left. She paused for a moment, then said, "Let me handle this kind of thing. You've just arrived here, and if you make enemies, it won't be good for you in Devil Head City." Madame Huang Xi could naturally tell. The young girl's actions just now were to help her out of this predicament. He didn't want her to be involved in the Jiang family's matter. The girl had already helped her a lot. If she wanted to repay the young girl, she should protect her well. However, he didn't expect that the young girl would still protect him. Yi Qing Luo smiled indifferently. "The barefooted are not afraid of the shoes. You have a lot to bear, but I don't need to worry about the consequences." In any case, she wouldn't be able to stay in the infernal domain for long. Moreover, she had come to find Xian. This meant that he would definitely ruin this unprecedented and grand wedding ceremony in the demon realm. At that time, wouldn't they still become enemies? Therefore, it didn't matter. "I don't want other things to get in the way of what you want to do." Madame Huang Xi smiled elegantly. "You don't have to worry too much about me. I am after all the First Lady. Even if the Jiang family wants to stand on my head, they will have to see if they have the qualifications." The two looked at each other and smiled. He didn't mention anything about the Jiang clan again. Yi Qing Luo directly followed Madame Huang Xi and stayed in the palace which the Devil Hall had arranged for Madame Huang Xi. He entered the main castle of Devil Head City, which was also known as the Devil Palace Castle. Yi Qing Luo sized up the surroundings. A palm-sized night pearl hung at regular intervals in the complex and dark castle, illuminating the entire castle. But in the style of this castle, Yi Qing Luo felt even more strange. Who would have thought that the Devil Hall actually liked this style? As for Madame Huang Xi's palace, it was slightly more lively. It wasn't that dark. After Madame Huang Xi and the rest had settled down, Madame Huang Xi found Yi Qing Luo and asked, "Miss Mu, I intend to go to the main hall to meet the Devil Hall. Do you want to travel together?" Devil Hall. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled. Of course I want to go. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 50-80. That was the devil hall that coveted her man and even announced that they wanted to marry her man. She really wanted to meet him. Look at what that bastard looks like. Huang Sifu nodded and smiled as elegantly as an orchid. She pulled Yiqing Luo's hand over and patted it gently. But this is after all the demon hall's castle, so don't be too rash, understand? Yiqing Luo lazily pouted her pink lips. I'm following you over, so naturally I'm representing your first husband Rao's face, so I won't mess around. It was her. Naturally she was fearless. Anyway, the ultimate goal was to find Diamo Xian. But now she was following Madame Huang Ci to meet the devil hall. That was Huang Sifu being forgiving. She did something. Everyone would only believe that this was done under Huang Sifu's mercy. No matter what, he couldn't cheat Madame Huang Ci. Madame Huang Ci's expression softened. She lowered her voice and said, "If there's a chance, I will help you ask for an audience with the Overlord." Yiqing Luo laughed softly. Was Madame Huang Ci trying to help her to mess up that devil hall's grand Rao's wedding ceremony? He was only going to greet the Lord of the Demon Palace. Madame Huang Ci only brought along her personal maid Hai Yun and Yiqing Luo. 3 people had just left their room. A servant dressed in black came forward. "Where would you like to go, Madame Huang Ci? Do you need me to accompany you?" Madame Huang Ci's expression didn't change as she spoke indifferently. "Lord Devil Hall is about to get married. This madam would like to go and greet Lord Devil Hall, as well as give him a wedding gift." She glanced at Hai Yun. Hai Yun respectfully held a tray with both hands, which was covered with a red velvet cloth. After the servants sized up the 3 of them, he had a respectful expression on his face. Recently, the Demon Palace Lord has been busy with the wedding matters. I don't know if he has the time right now. Allow me to report to him so that Madam doesn't have to make a wasted trip. Madame Huang Ci waved her hands indicating for him to report. After the man left, Yiqing Luo tugged Huang Sifu's sleeve. "This place, has it always been like this?" The servant was obviously waiting at the door. The feeling he gave Yiqing Luo was like watching them. Moreover, it restricted their freedom. She was going to inform Madame Huang Ci so that she wouldn't have to waste her time. In reality, Madame Huang Ci still needed the permission of the Devil Hall's great Rao before she could meet him. As her first husband, Madame Rao Huang Ci had to do this. Not to mention the others. This Devil Hall. Were they guarding against all the people who came to Devil Head City like wolves? The Devil region is not peaceful. It is normal for Lord Devil Hall to act this way. Huang Sifu was already used to it. If they were to come to the Devil Phoenix continent, I would also be worried. Yiqing Luo spread out her hands. I don't really understand the concerns of the higher-ups. The 2 of them faced each other. The servant had already come over. He bowed respectfully towards the 3 of them. Lord Devil Hall happens to be free. Please follow me. Madame Huang Ci nodded slightly. The 3 of them followed the servant, turning here and there. The overall style of the castle leaned toward the dark style. But after Yiqing Luo stepped into the guest hall, it was a completely different scene. The entire hall was magnificent, grand, and luxurious. A slender figure sat lazily on the main throne. That throne seemed to be made out of black stone, sparkling with black rays. The lady was dressed in a black feather-long dress, dragging on the ground, showing off her slender and graceful figure. The moment Yiqing Luo entered, at first glance, she met that lady's eyes. Chapter 50-81. The lady's looks could topple a city. That kind of city-toppling, cold elegance with an arrogant nobility. Her beauty. Not like Huang Sifu's elegance. Not like Yiqing Luo's flamboyant beauty. But a kind of exuding a noble charm which made one submit to her. Yiqing Luo congealed slightly as her long and narrow eyes raised frivolously. This Devil Hall was not bad looking. It wasn't a big white lotus but a black lotus. Devil Hall Lord, long time no see. Madame Huang Ci went forward and took a look at Hai Yun. Congratulations on Devil Hall Lord's wedding, this is a token of my appreciation. Hai Yun immediately presented the gift. The elegant and languid lady slowly straightened her slender waist. A head of jet black hair was like a waterfall, cascading down her back. It added a few more points of charm to her noble and cold elegance. Madame Huang Ci has spent a lot of money. Her clear and melodious voice was extremely pleasant to the ears in this hall. I am already very happy that Madame is able to attend my wedding. Madame Huang Xi laughed lightly. I didn't expect Devil Hall Lord to marry the Overlord. She pretended to be casual as she continued. The Overlord rarely steps into the Devil's domain, and it was because of you that he agreed to marry you in the Devil's domain. Devil Hall de Ren laughed softly as his brows were filled with a chilly smile. Devil Hall Lord was obviously delighted by Huang Sifu's words. She raised her hand and her soft wrist curled up as she gently brushed a poppy hairpin on her hair. I didn't expect the Overlord to be willing to marry me in the Devil's domain. Madame Huang Xi naturally understood that obvious action. That hairpin is a gift from the Overlord? It suits Devil Hall Lord very well. The Lord of the Demon Royal Hall lowered his eyes and smiled. His noble and cold temperament became much more relaxed. He personally made it for me. Although there are some flaws, it is a token of Di Zun's sincerity. I have always worn it. The Overlord and Devil Hall Decay are really affectionate. Madame Huang Xi's eyes revealed a glint of envy. This glint of envy was appropriate. After being noticed by the Devil Hall, Madame Huang Xi lowered her eyes. This madam has always heard of the legends of Di Zun, and is extremely respectful towards Di Zun. I wonder if Lord Devil Hall can introduce me to him? This sentence made Yiqing Luo stunned for a moment. Naturally she understood. Madame Huang Xi was trying to help her. However, in this way. If she met Di Mo Xian and brought Lin Mo Xian away, would this Devil Hall spare Madame Huang Xi? Not sure if it was Yiqing Luo's misperception. She always felt that. Ever since she entered the main hall, the eyes of the demonic hall had been on her. Madame Huang Xi pretended to be polite. When the Devil Palace was replying to Huang Sifu's words and also displaying their affection, he intentionally took a glance at her. Although his gaze was very indifferent, but he could also see that there was a hint of provocation. Yiqing Luo? Was it an illusion? Why did she feel that there were so many people deliberately targeting her in the demonic domain? That Jiang Shuanger was. This demon hall was the same. Was it an illusion? Or, this demonic hall had already recognized her identity? Impossible. She was still in disguise as Muyu. Although Ji Wuhua, that fellow, looked a little unreliable. But there was absolutely no problem with his disguise. As long as she didn't use Ji Wuhua's medicine and removed the disguise. At least for half a year's time, she would be able to wear this dainty girl-next-door face and not be discovered by anyone. Chapter 5082. She wasn't acquainted with the demonic palace. How could the demonic palace possibly detect her identity? But the demonic palace provoked her and even intentionally flaunted their love. What was going on? Could it be? She wanted to snatch the bride. And it was spread to the ears of the demonic palace by the people in Madame's residence? Yiqing Luo felt that there was a high possibility of this. Then now, Madame Huang Xi mentioned to introduce her to the Overlord. Perhaps it had already made the demonic palace suspicious of her. To tell the truth, when she saw the demonic palace flaunting her hairpin, Yiqing Luo's heart wasn't affected at all. Her Xian would never make hairpins or accessories for other women. She was certain of this. Moreover, her Xian was such a perfect man. There was no flaw in anything he made. This baby would not get angry over such a small matter. I'm so sorry, Madame Huang Xi. The demonic palace slowly placed her hand in front of her as she gave a cold and noble smile. The Overlord is busy with the wedding with me these few days and doesn't have time to meet guests. She paused for a moment as that pair of clear beautiful eyes casually swept past Yiqing Luo and said, "Tomorrow Madame will still be able to meet you." Madame Huang Xi only gave a regretful smile. That's right, tomorrow is the marriage ceremony between the demonic palace and the Overlord. At that time, I'll have to trouble the demonic palace to introduce you. Of course. The demonic palace smiled lightly. Madame Huang Xi's motive had not been achieved and she was about to bring Yiqing Luo away. The demonic palace's voice suddenly rang. "This young lady? Who is she? Why have I not seen her around, madam?" The demonic palace's gaze shifted onto Yiqing Luo as his eyes were filled with probing and judgmental, as well as some arrogance. Madame Huang Xi's words were stuck in her throat. She took a look at Yiqing Luo and hurriedly said, "This is my accompanying doctor." She gave an ashamed smile. "My health is deteriorating day by day. Now even when I travel I have to bring this doctor along. I've let the demonic palace laugh at me. Madame's doctor is really young. The demonic palace gave a profound smile. But since Madame has given her all for the Demon Phoenix continent, you should consider your own health. Madame Huang Xi nodded her head. Thank you for your concern, Lord Devil Hall. The Devil Palace's vision was still on Yiqing Luo, not shifting away at all. The atmosphere was somewhat stiff. After a long time, it was so long that Madame Huang Xi was already thinking of an excuse to leave. The demonic hall finally spoke. Recently, this demonic hall has been busy with the wedding, and my body isn't feeling well. Why don't? Her red lips curled up and she spoke in a mysterious tone. Madam, are you willing to part with your treasure and lend this young doctor to me for a day? As soon as he said that, the three people in the room all stared at the Devil Hall in astonishment. Madame Huang Xi's expression froze for a moment, but very quickly she regained her elegant and noble smile. Lord Devil Hall, this? Before he could finish, the indolent and cold woman snorted. She stood up slowly. She was wearing a long black dress with crow feathers, like black smoke fluttering in the wind. It made her look even more mysterious and enchanting. This demonic palace is just joking. Why is Madame's reaction so huge? The demonic palace covered her mouth as she laughed lightly. A pair of cold beautiful eyes were flowing with a faint cold glint. Madame really treasures this doctor. Madame Huang Xi's expression didn't have much change as she calmly met the demonic palace's gaze. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5083. Lord Devil Hall must be joking. Madame Huang Xi pulled Yiqing Luo's hand. I just can't leave Dr. Mu. The minute I heard that Lord Devil is going to leave Dr. Mu, I started to panic. She smiled faintly as if she was relieved. Fortunately, Lord Devil Hall is only joking. Otherwise, I really don't know how to reject Lord Devil Hall. Madame Huang Xi's tone was filled with intimacy. It seemed to have shortened the distance between them. But between the two sides, there was a smile that didn't reach their eyes. This time the demon hall did not obstruct them at all. He allowed Madame Huang Xi to pull Yiqing Luo and the three of them left together. The servants were still waiting at the door. He only left after sending the three of them to Madame Huang Xi's courtyard. He returned to his room. Madame Huang Xi's expression turned cold. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly. Miss Mu, Lord Demon Palace, does she know you? It seemed like it wasn't just her imagination. That Devil Hall, it really seemed like he was targeting her. Yiqing Luo shook her head. I can't be sure, but what I can be sure of is, I don't know her. Madame Huang Xi sat down, her expression was solemn. In the days in Devil Head City, you have to be more careful. Lord Devil Hall seems to have a different kind of enmity towards you. She lowered her eyebrows slightly. I thought she already knew that you wanted to kidnap her at her wedding ceremony, but she didn't do anything. Tomorrow was the wedding ceremony. If the Lord Devil Hall really knew of Yiqing Luo's motive, how could he possibly allow Yiqing Luo to be safe and sound? Unless, that Devil Hall had already made other preparations. Madam, don't worry. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with warmth. I will be careful, you don't need to worry for me. Madame Huang Xi sighed softly as she looked at Yiqing Luo, hesitating to speak. Yiqing Luo's eyes softened as she chuckled. You want to ask me what's the relationship between me and the Overlord, right? Madame Huang Xi hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. Although they had not known each other for long. But Madame Huang Xi still believed in her own judgment. She still believed in Yiqing Luo. Such a proud girl had come all the way to Devil Head City just for His Majesty. She also had someone she loved deeply. Naturally, he could tell. When Muyu mentioned Dizun, that pair of enchanting eyes blossomed with light. It couldn't be faked. But, today after meeting the Demon Hall, Madame Huang Xi was still a little worried. What she was worried about was not whether Muyu and the Overlord had that kind of relationship. Instead, she was afraid that Muyu had been deceived by His Majesty. If the marriage between the Dizun and the Devil Hall Lord was true, Dizun also sincerely wanted to marry Lord Devil Palace Lord. Then Twilight Rain appeared at this time. It would only bring about a fatal disaster. Madame Huang Xi wanted to tell Yiqing Luo her guess, but he didn't know how to say it. However, the girl had already curled up the corners of her lips, and her eyes were filled with a smile. There was an unwavering brilliance in her eyes. I have never doubted Xian, because there was no doubt. There was no need to discuss whether to believe in Diamo Xian. She smiled. Tomorrow? You will understand the ins and outs of the matter. Madame Huang Xi sighed softly. As long as you have an idea in your heart, you should take note of this. I feel that. Lord Devil Palace Lord has an inexplicable enmity towards you, so I'm afraid he won't take it lying down. 7th young miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th young miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5084. Yi Qing Luo pacified him. I'm in the Demon Hall Castle. If anything happens, it's her responsibility. My current identity is that of your personal doctor, the kind that can't leave me. If anything happens to me in her territory, it's her problem. What's more, tomorrow is her wedding ceremony. If she wasn't stupid, she wouldn't have done such a thing at this critical juncture. That was the analysis. But the reality was, that Devil Hall wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. That night, the other party came to stir up trouble. Moreover, he did it in an aboveboard way. At night, Yi Qing Luo had just laid down for less than 30 minutes. With his sharp senses, he heard a sound coming from outside the door. The sound was very faint. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as she quietly flipped herself up. Under the dim light of the luminous pearl, elongated shadows were cast outside the door. There were at least a dozen of them. Oh, what is he trying to do? Yi Qing Luo didn't believe that those who dared to take action in Demonic Hall Castle didn't have that Lord Demonic Hall's approval. Therefore, these people were specially sent by the Lord of the Demonic Hall to find her? Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as her pink lips curled slightly, revealing a cold arc which seemed to be ridiculing and ridiculing. Then he stretched his body. The secret technique of teleportation. She had already gone straight from her room to the room on the first floor. It was Madame Huang Xi's room. There was no sound in the room. Given Madame Huang Xi's strength, she went to her room. No matter what, he should have discovered her existence. But Madame Huang Xi did not seem to have much of a reaction. Yi Qing Luo's heart sank slightly as she took quick steps towards Madame Huang Xi's direction. With the help of the faint light projected from the outside, Yi Qing Luo saw Madame Huang Xi's eyes tightly shut, as though she had fallen into a deep sleep. Even if she was near, Madame Huang Xi had no reaction at all. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and checked Madame Huang Xi's pulse. As expected, Madame Huang Xi had fainted after being drugged. Madame Huang Xi was unconscious and Hai Yun was probably the same. Looks like this was indeed the work of that demon hall. It really was a black lotus that was different from other white lotuses. He just didn't play by the rules. Upstairs, a few light footsteps were heard, but Yi Qing Luo could hear it clearly. Then the footsteps became chaotic. He's not here. Quick, find him. Then those people started to search around the room. Obviously, everyone in the courtyard had fallen into a deep sleep. Otherwise, those people wouldn't have dared to run around the courtyard so brazenly. Yi Qing Luo scoffed. The demon palace only made them fall asleep. This meant that he did not intend to take Madame Huang Xi and the rest's lives. The footsteps gradually approached Madame Huang Xi's room. Yi Qing Luo speedily took out a pill and stuffed it into Madame Huang Xi's mouth. Then he used a teleportation secret technique and quickly left the courtyard. She left very quickly. He didn't find anything. The woman, who had fallen into a deep slumber, slowly opened her eyes after the pill entered her throat. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw an afterimage flash past his eyes. A familiar aura made her completely stunned. His brain, which had been knocked out by external forces, was still a little muddled. But Madame Huang Xi endured the discomfort and sat up. Her vision looked towards the direction where Yi Qing Luo had disappeared. She didn't sense wrongly. It was the aura of the teleportation secret technique. It was the teleportation secret technique. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5085. This place. Why was there a blink movement secret arts presence? Madame Huang Xi suppressed the dizziness in her head and was about to flip over. She heard messy footsteps outside the door and a voice which wasn't suppressed intentionally. Madame's room is the only one left to search. Let's go in and take a look. Search? Search for what? Huang Xi's brows creased slightly as her action of flipping over stopped. She then laid back down and closed her eyes. Very quickly, a group of people rushed into the room and walked around without any scruples, as though they were searching for something. After ascertaining that there was no one else in the room, another swarm of people left the room. Wuxia wasn't a fool. She was connecting her muddled brain with those people's actions earlier. She had more or less guessed something. She silently released her perception until she was sure that the entire courtyard had quietened down. She then slowly opened her eyes. That group of people dared to barge into her courtyard without any scruples. They must be from the demonic hall. What did they want to search for? Huang Xi pressed her slightly dizzy head as she propped herself up and headed towards Yiqing Luo's room on the second floor. On seeing that there was no one in the room, recalling the attitude of the demonic hall lord towards Yiqing Luo during the day, her expression congealed as she immediately disappeared into the darkness. The main hall of the demonic hall's castle. A lady dressed in a crow feather black dress leaned lazily on the huge obsidian throne, her posture indolent as there wasn't any emotion in her eyes. Her red lips curled into a confident and arrogant sneer, as though she had long controlled everything in the palm of her hands. When Yiqing Luo neared the main hall, she saw such a scene. She hid in the shadows, concealing her presence very well. Suddenly, a bell-like laughter reverberated in the hall. "Overlord, do you really bear to hand her over to me?" When she heard the two words, Overlord, Yiqing Luo's heart jumped. Overlord? Xian was here too? Who was this she that the demonic hall was referring to? That laughter wrapped around Yiqing Luo in strands. After a while, in the cold and spacious hall, a familiar voice with a tinge of indifference and coldness rang out, drowning out the woman's laughter. "If I can't bear to, what will you do?" Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. It was Xian's voice. It was definitely Xian's voice. Is he really here? Moreover, he was together with the Devil Hall? In the middle of the night, a man and a woman. Was he getting bolder? Yiqing Luo's little fists clenched tightly, restraining the urge to rush out. The demon sovereign laughed charmingly. "Dizun is really heartless. If you can't bear to do it, I will be jealous." She laughed and laughed, drawing out the last syllable. Soon after, he suddenly paused and his voice seemed to be wrapped in a layer of frost. "When this prince gets jealous, someone will pay the price." That cold and thin voice snorted. Then he indifferently spat out two words, "Up to you." Soon after, a gust of wind blew past. "Iske, what a boring man, but I love him so much." She sighed softly. Yiqing Luo stood silently in the dark, as her expression faintly revealed some treacherous emotions. That voice, it was indeed Xian's. No matter if it was the voice or intonation or the way he spoke. Indeed it was Xian. But she didn't believe it. She understood the meaning behind the Devil Hall's words. The she in the Devil Hall's words was probably referring to her? If it was really Xian, why would Xian say the words, "Up to you," allowing the Devil Hall to do anything to her? Trash 7th young mistress. "Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love." Trash 7th young mistress. "Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5086. After experiencing several fake Xian incidents, plus Yiqing Luo's absolute trust towards DMO Xian, although Yiqing Luo felt a little upset in her heart, but there was more suspicion than anger. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure what this demonic palace was trying to do. To make a move on a distinguished guest who came to attend the wedding ceremony on their own turf. If this got out of hand, then the wedding would be hard to arrange. She was pondering over it. Suddenly footsteps were heard outside the door. Following that, a group of people hurriedly ran over. "Lord Demonic Palace, there's no sign of that young lady in the room. I've searched the entire courtyard but there's no trace of that young lady." Demonic Palace's exquisite brows rose as she gave a cold smile. "She's rather quick-witted to be able to guess my plan." Yiqing Luo? No, she couldn't guess it. It was just that her physique was special and couldn't be bewitched. Plus her senses had always been sharp, especially with the blink movement secret arts. So she barely avoided Demonic Palace's plan. She really didn't expect that Demonic Palace dared to make a move on her own turf. But this also showed one point. In Demonic Palace's eyes, she actually didn't care about the other 3 continents' authoritative figures. Or rather, her ambition was no longer just the so-called Lord Demonic Palace. In the Devil region, the 3 continents each had their own authoritative figures. For example, Demon Phoenix Continent's Madame Huang Ci, and Demonic Palace was the overall authoritative figure of the three continents. Their motive was to restrain the balance of the three continents. This Demonic Palace didn't seem to be worried that Madame Huang Ci would find trouble with her. So what if she ran away? As long as she's still in Devil Head City? She won't be able to escape from my grasp. Demonic Palace gave a charming smile as her tone turned cold. On account that tomorrow is my wedding day, I'll be merciful and let her off. Demonic Palace paused as the glint in her eyes deepened as her red lips curled into an evil cold arc. Speaking of this, rather than killing her now, why not let her witness with her own eyes the marriage between me and the Overlord? That scene should be more exciting. As though she had already imagined this scene in her mind, the Demon Queen laughed loudly. Her crow-feathered black dress fluttered with her laughter like ripples, making her look even colder and more elegant like a plum blossom. All of you can leave. She gave the order. A group of men and horses quickly disappeared into the darkness. The Devil Palace slowly stood up. Her dress fluttered in the wind like black butterfly wings, dreamy and beautiful. Yi Qing Luo stayed in the dark. They stayed there for a long time. Even if the demonic hall had already left for half an hour, she did not move either. In his mind, the scene of the conversation between the demon hall and that familiar and cold voice suddenly appeared. It was a voice that was so familiar that it penetrated deep into his bones. It was so familiar that she couldn't tell whether it was fake or not. The words of the demon hall had already made it very clear. She knew who she was. He knew about her relationship with DMO Xian. That was why they were targeting her. However, how did the Devil Hall know about this? She was currently using the identity of Twilight Rain. Everything related to Yi Qing Luo had been sealed. Today, even Old Man Song and her war pet, as well as the vast water god weapon etc., were all unusable. And to such a stage, how could the Devil Hall recognize her? Most importantly, she and this so-called Devil Hall were totally not familiar with each other. How did the Devil Hall know about her relationship with DMO Xian? Or did they know about her identity? This question could only wait till tomorrow's wedding ceremony to find out the answer. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5087. It was totally unrealistic to search for DMO Xian in the Demonic Palace Castle now. Not to mention that she wasn't familiar with the layout of the Demonic Palace Castle. Even if she was, there was no way she could roam around the Demonic Palace Castle. Tomorrow? She would always be able to see DMO Xian at the wedding ceremony. By then she would know the reason. Yi Qing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes as she displayed her blink movement secret art and disappeared from the castle's main hall. She had just returned to Madame Huang Ci's courtyard. She just stepped in. Her wrist tightened. In the darkness, Madame Huang Ci's hand grabbed her arm tightly. Are you all right? Her eyes were filled with worry as she sized Yi Qing Luo up. You're awake. Yi Qing Luo smiled at her and pulled her back into the house. I'm fine, don't worry. What happened? Madame Huang Ci frowned, her expression was extremely ugly. After the both of them sat on the chair, Yi Qing Luo took Madame Huang Ci's pulse as she replied, That demonic palace indeed knows the reason why I came to Devil Head City. Madame Huang Ci's pulse was very stable. The things that demonic palace planted didn't have much of an effect on Madame Huang Ci. Yi Qing Luo was relieved. Based on Madame Huang Ci's current body, she really couldn't take on other kinds of poison. Madame Huang Ci allowed Yi Qing Luo to take her pulse as her thoughts were fixed on Yi Qing Luo's words. Her expression suddenly sunk. Then, demonic palace wants to capture you? In case you spoil her wedding? Initially he might have thought so. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers propped up her chin as her slightly curved eyes were filled with a cold glint, but not necessarily. That demonic palace wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. Demonic palace's target was her. It might not be because he was worried that she would spoil the wedding. Or possibly, he wanted to torture her. Why not? Why not you go and hide first? When I see the Overlord, I'll help you pass on a message. Madame Huang Ci revealed a worried expression. That demonic palace's way of doing things. Extremely unreasonable. No one could guess what she was thinking. If demonic palace set his eyes on Evening Rain, then, if Twilight Rain continued to stay in the Demon Hall Castle, it would instead attract a fatal disaster. Yiqing Luo held Madame Huangxi's hand gently as her long and narrow eyes were filled with a cold glint. I came to Devil Head City to wreck the wedding ceremony's venue, how could I possibly dodge? She softened her expression and smiled again. Moreover, in the eyes of the Devil Hall, we are in the same group. Do you think, if I hide, she will give you the chance to meet the sovereign alone? Moreover, it was still uncertain whether that person was a venerable sovereign. Yiqing Luo didn't believe it. Her Xian would appear at the wedding ceremony of another woman. He looked at Madame Huangxi's worried face. Yiqing Luo comforted him. Don't worry, I know how to protect myself. Seeing her insistence, Madame Huangxi could only sigh lightly. Don't force yourself. Yiqing Luo smiled and brought the topic back to the matter which she was suspicious of previously. The Devil Hall actually dared to act against her, the person protected by Madame Huangxi in the Devil Hall castle. He even poisoned Madame Huangxi, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. This action. It was totally provoking the Devil Phoenix continent. Madame Huangxi's eyelids drooped slightly. That exquisite face was covered with a layer of faint melancholy. She pursed her lips slightly and sighed softly. Actually, there were signs of this long ago. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5088. As the lord of a continent, no matter how unwell she would still be in control of most matters in the Devil region. A leader would absolutely not allow anything to be out of her control. Initially, the Devil region's 3 continents were in balance. Devil Head City was located in the center of the 3 continents, with Devil Hall as the leader. This was considered stable. But no one knew when it started. Over at Devil Hall's side there were some changes. Unknowingly, all the powerhouses in the 3 continents were leaning towards Devil Hall. The powers of the 3 continents were well aware of this, but they couldn't point it out, so they could only investigate and counterattack in the dark. Following that, Devil Hall directly took away part of the authority in their hands. All the way till now. Huang Sifu's drooping brows were cold and gloomy. I always feel that this marriage ceremony is not as simple a marriage. Yiqing Luo agreed with this point. Devil Hall's actions tonight. They totally didn't consider if it would affect her marriage tomorrow. Even if Devil Hall's status was above the 3 continents' powers. But if Madame Huangxi were to create a ruckus because of her being caught, no matter what, it would affect the marriage ceremony. Moreover, earlier, in Devil Hall's main hall, Devil Hall and DMO Xian's conversation, Yiqing Luo didn't feel that Devil Hall liked DMO Xian at all. This matter. There must be a problem. Rest early, tomorrow we will know. What is that Devil Hall planning? Yiqing Luo patted Huang Xifu's shoulder. Rest enough before you have the energy. The next day. It was still not daybreak. The entire Devil Head City was a scene of jubilation. This liveliness continued till morning. Yiqing Luo and Madame Huangxi had their meal and were led by Devil Hall's attendants to the wedding ceremony venue. Along the way, Devil Hall's surroundings were totally different from when they came. Devil Hall's castle was decorated with lanterns and streamers, red silk hung everywhere. Big red, double happiness words were pasted on every wall and door. Yiqing Luo and the rest followed the attendant out of Devil Hall's castle, and under the attendant's instructions, they boarded a magic ship. On top of the magic ship, there were already 5 to 6 people who were of high status and authority. When they saw Madame Huangxi, they all stood up to greet her. Madame Huangxi politely returned the greeting. Then, after exchanging a few pleasantries, they each took their own seats. The Demon Palace had set the wedding to be held at the largest square in Devil Head City. Under the recent management of the square, it was grand and luxurious, fully displaying the style of the Devil Hall. Countless citizens of the demon domain had gathered around and were watching with their heads raised. Their words were filled with joy for the marriage of the Demon Hall. They were even discussing the love story between the sovereign and the Demon Palace. His imagination was so good that he could write a 5-million-word novel. After the demonic ship arrived, beautiful maids came forward and led the people on the demonic ship to their seats. Yiqing Luo had been looking around the entire way. The people of the infernal region looked no different from humans. The only difference was, regardless of whether they were men or women, young or old, they all wore thick eyeliner and had 4 sharp teeth in their mouths. Madame Huangxi was the ruler of a continent. His position was naturally very close to the front. It was the second row away from Xinrao. After Yiqing Luo sat down, she sized up the people around her. Numerous strong practitioners from the infernal region were all invited over as their faces were filled with smiles as they chatted with the people around them. Madame Huang Xi could roughly tell that Yiqing Luo didn't know much about the matters of the infernal region. Chapter 5089. Occasionally he would lower his voice to explain to her the surrounding identities. The two of them were whispering something. The seat beside Yiqing Luo was occupied by someone. Yiqing Luo subconsciously looked over. He saw a man in a moon-white robe leaning lazily against the back of the chair in the distance of a pedestrian passageway. What made Yiqing Luo astonished was that man's hair was silver in color. It was obviously the symbol of the purest white robe and white hair man, but he had a captivating face. That face was extraordinarily handsome, bewitching and bewitching. Especially that pair of long and narrow curved phoenix eyes, which carried a charm. When it was slightly raised, it hooked into a wavy arc. Unfortunately, such an evildoer's temperament, under the white robe and white hair, was totally compatible. Good looks really could handle any style. Every table here represented a powerhouse. Every table's fingertip was separated by a distance of a pedestrian walkway. Perhaps it was because Yiqing Luo's gaze was too scorching without any concealment. That lazy and contented man suddenly raised his eyes, meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze as he looked over. Just like that, their eyes met. Yiqing Luo could feel her own heart constricting for a moment. He really was an evildoer. This face, this temperament. If it was any other lady, they would probably drown under his charm. The man was apparently curious. After their eyes met, the young lady actually continued to look at him without any change in expression. And there wasn't any shyness or any ripples in her emotions. The man's brows rose slightly as he sized up the young lady with interest. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi tugged Yiqing Luo's hand hard. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted away as she looked towards Madame Huang Xi. Huang Xifu's expression wasn't too good as he suppressed his voice. That is Devil Wings Continent's King Yijio. She looked at the man's gaze towards Yiqing Luo as her expression sunk as she continued. I heard that he hates women, especially women, staring at his looks. There are rumors outside that he might be a... Madame Huang Xi raised her arm as she pulled down her wide sleeves. Cut off the sleeve. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and glanced sideways at the man with interest, which was in the direction of Wing King Yijio. Then she retracted her gaze. Tiske. Such a good-looking man, but he's gay, what a pity. Yiqing Luo whispered. Suddenly, a low and flirtatious voice came from behind him, like a peach blossom caressing his face. You keep staring at this prince, what is your intention? It was unknown when Yijio had walked to Yiqing Luo's side. A clear and serene male scent of green bamboo seeped into his nose. Yiqing Luo had just turned back. She was met with an enlarged version of a handsome face that was right in front of her. Wing Nine bent down and looked down at the girl in front of him. Her face had the facial features of a cute girl next door. She could barely be considered elegant and pleasant. But, those eyes. It made people want to look into the abyss in her eyes and sink into it. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she looked at this close proximity, that charming face as she opened her mouth. Can you stay further away from me? This distance, wasn't it a little too close? There were already quite a number of strong practitioners from the devil's domain looking over. Where was the disgusting woman? What was he doing standing so close to her? King Yi. When Madame Huang Xi saw this, she immediately stood up and called out. Chapter 5090. She raised her hand and used her wide sleeves to block Yiqing Luo's and Yi Wang's eyes. Yi Wang then shifted his gaze away. Madame Huang Xi's face sunk. Yi Wang, this is Dr. Rao. Yi Wang straightened his body lazily and sat down on the chair next to Yiqing Luo naturally. I didn't do anything, why is Madame so agitated? Huang Xifu replied indifferently, Yi Wang's seat is not here. I and Madame haven't met for a long time, Madame can bear to chase me away? Yi Wang casually glanced at Madame Huang Xi and poured himself a cup of tea. Anyway, I came here alone, why don't I have a companion? Huang Xifu's face turned gloomy. She frowned. Yi Wang, Dr. Mu only took a few more glances at you because you are too good-looking. She is my Dr. Rao, if Yi Wang is angry, feel free to come to me. Yi Wang didn't seem to hear the impatience and coldness in Madame Huang Xi's words. Instead, his long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into an arc as he turned to Yiqing Luo and asked with a smile, "Miss Mu really think I'm handsome?" Huang Xiaifu's face turned black. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. Looking at Yi Wang's smiling face, which looked even more like a beauty that could bring calamity to the country. She blinked her eyes again. This was a dead question. Based on Madame Huang Xi's image of Yi Wang, he hated other women to look at him. Maybe he felt that his face was a burden, so he couldn't admit it. But if he denied it, it would probably annoy Yi Wang. Yiqing Luo expressed that this question was hard to answer. So she asked back, "Then Yi Wang think you look good?" Good. Yi Wang didn't hesitate as his slender fingers touched his chin and the ends of his eyes lifted. Yiqing Luo felt that he was purposely exuding his male hormones. This Yi Wang was probably a stuffy horse flea? Yiqing Luo smiled and smiled again. Good looking. The King of Wings tilted his head, and his long silver hair cascaded down his shoulders. "However, I feel that your answer is completely insincere, as if you are just brushing me off." Yiqing Luo. So she thought this was a suicide question. The king. Madame Huang Xi frowned. "Madame is fine." Yiqing Luo held onto Madame Huang Xi, curled her lips and shook her head. Up until now, she had not sensed any malicious intent from the Wing King. According to her analysis, this was probably the first time Yi Wang had met a young lady like her. After seeing his beautiful face, she was still able to remain clear-headed under his seductive charm. Therefore he was a little interested. Yiqing Luo expressed, what kind of peerless beauty had she not seen before? She had already devoured all the top beauties in the world, including her Xian. No matter how beautiful Yi Wang was, Yi Wang couldn't do anything about it. Her heart wasn't moved at all, okay? And there was movement over here. Many of the guests around them were shocked. Those who could attend the wedding ceremony were either rich or noble. Who didn't know that the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was a person who detested women? But now, the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was actually sitting on Huang Xiaifu Rao's seat, and was even chatting cheerfully with a young lady? And they were so close. Could it be? The Devil Wing Continent and the Devil Phoenix Continent were going to unite by marriage. This thought instantly caused an uproar among the guests. All of them expressed their disbelief. Chapter 5091. He listened to the millions of words that the people around him once again filled in the gaps in their minds. Yiqing Luo was speechless. She didn't expect these people from the Devil region to have such a strong imagination. But Yiqing Luo didn't reject Yi Wang sitting beside her. He chatted back and forth with the King of Wings. On the other hand, Madame Huang Xi's eyes were filled with worry and vigilance as she stared at Yi Wang. There were more and more guests around. The scene of the wedding ceremony was getting more and more lively. King Yi's eyes were filled with interest as he stared at Yiqing Luo, the corners of his eyes raised as he smiled. The first time this duke saw Miss Mu, I was already filled with joy. I wonder if Miss Mu is willing to follow this duke back to the Devil Wings continent, to be this duke's princess? Yiqing Luo? Madame Huang Xi was drinking tea when her hand shook and the teacup fell onto the rain. Yi Wang's words had shocked the both of them. On the contrary, Yi Wang didn't feel that his words had much influence on them. He was still smiling as he deliberately exuded his charm. What do you think, Miss Mu? Yiqing Luo placed the teacup on the table and fixed her gaze on Yi Wang. Yi Wang allowed her to size him up. Yiqing Luo stared for a while and was extremely calm. You like me? Yi Wang leaned forward slightly and closed the distance between him and Yiqing Luo. His long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. I find you very interesting. I just find it interesting, not to the extent of liking. On what basis do you want to marry me? Yiqing Luo rejected him directly. After you find me boring, won't you abandon me? Ha ha ha. Yi Wang laughed softly as his silver hair swayed in front of his chest. Miss Mu is indeed straightforward, making me fall in love with you. Yiqing Luo was expressionless. I forgot to tell Yi Wang something. Yi Wang raised his brows with interest. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly. I am already married. Yi Wang's eyes widened slightly as he was somewhat surprised. But immediately after, he laughed in a low voice. So what? He casually picked up the teapot and filled the young lady's teacup before bringing the tea to Yiqing Luo's lips. That green bamboo-like fragrance assaulted her senses. He approached her and chuckled. Even if we are married, if this king likes you, you can only be this king's. As he spoke, he handed the teacup over. Yiqing Luo was about to raise her hand to block Yi Wang. However, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was just a short pause. The teacup in Yi Wang's hand was already at her lips. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and held the teacup as she looked towards the direction of that chilling intent. The seats were full of guests, but she didn't see that familiar yet bone-chilling aura. She didn't know where it came from. That chill. Someone must be watching her. Wing King, please behave yourself. Madame Huang Ci waved her hand and separated the distance between Yiqing Luo and Yi Wang, then pulled her behind her. No matter what motive you have, Dr. Mu is not someone you can play with. The corners of King Yi's lips curled upwards. She lowered her gaze and focused on her own hand. That was the hand that the girl had grabbed just now. She snatched the cup from his hand and let go of him. However, he still felt that the touch of her hand was still faintly lingering. Yi Wang lifted his eyes slightly, his narrow phoenix eyes revealed some unknown glint. He looked at Madame Huang Ci and smiled faintly. Perhaps, this king does not intend to play with her? Then I will still reject. This sentence was Yiqing Luo's reply. Chapter 5092. While smashing 5, the title is wrong. Yiqing Luo placed the teacup on the table. I am already married and I love my husband very much, so it's not your turn to please me. Wing 9, who had been completely rejected, smiled even more brightly. He shifted his body and slumped back onto the chair as his gaze casually looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Squinting in that direction, and with an unclear meaning, his thin lips curled upwards. I didn't expect Miss Mu to have so many pursuers. Yiqing Luo? What did he mean? Yijio didn't have the intention to explain to her as he sat by the side and poured himself a cup of tea. Then he stared ahead at the stage where the newlyweds were going to bow to heaven and earth. It wasn't the auspicious hour yet. The two newlyweds hadn't come out yet. Yiqing Luo didn't talk to Yijio anymore. Madame Huang Ci held Yiqing Luo's hand and asked in a low voice, "You are really married?" Yiqing Luo smiled and nodded. Madame Huang Ci looked towards the stage and coughed lightly. Could it be the Overlord? Yiqing Luo raised her brows and smiled mysteriously. This? I'm not sure. Maybe her husband was really the groom today. Or maybe not. Madame Huang Ci was stunned. Yes means yes, no means no? What did she mean by not sure? She couldn't even say for sure who her husband was? Madame Huang Ci felt that the marriage mentioned by Muyu was just an excuse to reject Yijio? As she spoke, the festive gongs and drums sounded. Accompanied by the wedding matron's joyous voice, the auspicious hour has arrived, may the bride and groom please come to the stage. At that moment, the entire wedding ceremony was filled with deafening applause and congratulations. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Then she raised her eyes and followed the gaze of these people to the flower carpet that extended to the door. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Ci held Yiqing Luo's hand tightly and whispered worriedly. Worried that she wouldn't be able to bear it. Yiqing Luo's lips curled but didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the door without blinking. Two figures slowly appeared and stepped onto the carpet of flowers on the ground. The woman wore a phoenix crown and red robe and her face was as red as fire. The man was dressed in a bright red wedding robe and was extraordinarily handsome. When the two of them appeared in front of everyone, thunderous applause erupted from the crowd. Tight and loose, the petals spread. The bride and groom held a red ribbon in their hands and walked step by step towards the stage. Everywhere he went, there were words of congratulations. Yiqing Luo's vision congealed on that pair of newlyweds, not even blinking once, not even blinking once. The man was handsome and elegant, but his face was expressionless at this moment. There was not the slightest bit of joy on his face. That face. Even if Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, she could still accurately recognize him. She was so familiar with the man in her bones. The emotion. Yiqing Luo looked on expressionlessly, looking. There was not the slightest change in his expression or any change in his emotions. But Madame Huang Ci, who was holding hands with her, could clearly feel the strength of the young lady's clenched fists. Her heart ached. But at this time he couldn't open his mouth to comfort her. She could only let the young girl hold her hand, giving the girl the only warmth. The bride and groom walked past them. They were very close to each other. The moment the newcomer passed by, the groom's vision brushed past Yiqing Luo. Obviously his footsteps paused. His 4 eyes met with Yiqing Luo's. That pair of deep and serene eyes seemed to be surging with raging waves. Beside him, the bride tugged at the red ribbon and said something in a low voice. The groom shifted his vision away and walked forward expressionlessly. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5093. The bride and groom were standing in the middle of the stage facing the guests. The matchmaker was still speaking joyous words. Madame Huang Xiai stood beside Yiqing Luo and naturally saw the groom's gaze when he stopped in his tracks and looked at Yiqing Luo. Her heart thumped as she gripped Yiqing Luo's wrist tightly and asked in a low voice, "Between you and the Overlord, is it really?" Earlier, the groom had obviously taken a look at Mu Yu. That slightly startled expression seemed to hide endless words. Seems? Yes. The young lady's expression didn't change much as she casually retracted her gaze from the pair of newlyweds and looked at Madame Huang Xiai with a sweet smile. Looking at him wearing this wedding robe, I'm a little stunned. Madame Huang Xi's heart was pounding. She couldn't tell if the young lady was suppressing the pain in her heart or if she really didn't care. She deliberated over her words before saying, "Could it be that he has some difficulties? Or, I'll find a chance to let the both of you have a private talk?" Yiqing Luo thought about it seriously as she tilted her head slightly and smiled. "No need, he will naturally come and look for me." At this moment, Madame Huang Xiai really couldn't understand what the young lady in front of her was thinking about. She could tell. Mu Yu's feelings for the Overlord was so deep. She came all the way to the Devil's domain just to look for the Overlord. But she witnessed the scene of the man she loved deeply marrying another lady with her own eyes. If it had been her, she would have been shocked. She might break down. But unfortunately, the young lady in front of her had a calm expression and her pink lips were still slightly curled up. Madame Huang Xiai was really worried if Mu Yu would suffocate herself to death. "TSK. Seems like there's a good show to watch." A frivolous voice rang from the side. Jiao propped up his head as he looked at Yiqing Luo with a smile. "Miss Mu, your marriage partner, don't tell me? Today's groom?" Earlier when the groom stopped in his tracks and exchanged glances with the young lady, although it wasn't obvious, but those who had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo were still able to sense it. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as her long and narrow eyes flowed with a sly smile. Then, "If I want to ruin today's marriage ceremony, will Duke Yi help me?" The girl's tone was soft, but her words were very bold and arrogant. There wasn't much emotion in her eyes as she slowly sat back down. Yi Wang stared straight at Yiqing Luo as though he wanted to see through her, straight into her soul. "What? Yi Wang doesn't dare anymore?" Yiqing Luo smiled wickedly. Nine Wing's tone was filled with an ambiguous sense of ridicule as he raised his eyebrows and looked at Yiqing Luo. "Miss Mu, what's the use of having a man who abandoned you? Why don't you become my princess? That way he will be angered to death." Yiqing Luo laughed softly. "Yi Wang's idea sounds pretty good." "That's right, so what's Miss Mu's answer?" Yi Wang suddenly straightened his body as that handsome face leaned towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Between her brows, there was a devilish charm. "Unfortunately, I'm not interested in you, Yi Wang." The young lady spat out her words indifferently as she rejected him in a straightforward manner. "What's more? I have nothing to do with today's groom. Yi Wang, don't ruin my reputation in case the Lord Devil Hall comes looking for me to settle the score." Yi Wang gave a faint, "Oh?" as he replied with a smile that didn't look like a smile. "Nothing to do with you? But I feel that your relationship is not shallow." Chapter 5094. What you think is your problem, it has nothing to do with me. Yiqing Luo's smile faded as she raised her slender hand and pushed him back to his seat. Following that, she shifted her vision towards the center of the stage. The newlyweds were standing there, going through all kinds of wedding procedures. Looking at the groom, holding the red silk and bowing to the wedding matron's joyous voice. Yiqing Luo expressed. There was no fluctuation in her heart, she even felt like laughing. That groom was indeed Dmo Xian's face. His every action was filled with Dmo Xian's shadow. But it wasn't Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to describe this feeling. Anyway, it was just the first look and she was already certain. He wasn't a Xian. Even if this groom looked like Dmo Xian. Even if he revealed an expression when he saw her. She was certain. This person was absolutely not Dimo Xian. Perhaps this kind of stubborn thinking in the eyes of outsiders might be seen as self-deception. Yiqing Luo gave a low laugh as she lowered her eyes to look at the profound phoenix ring on her fingertips. To conceal her identity, it had covered the original glow, making it look extremely dim. There was no fluctuation in the profound phoenix ring. Her fingertips gently caressed the profound phoenix ring as her mind was filled with thoughts. If the groom in front of her wasn't Dimo Xian, then what was the intention of the demonic palace? This was also clear. The demonic palace knew that Dimo Xian was in the devil's domain. Most importantly, earlier the groom looked at her. What did it mean? Her current identity was Sunset Rain. Yiqing Luo's mind was sketching out the development of the matter, attempting to deduce the demonic palace's motive. And the way she lowered her eyes in deep thoughts. In Huang Sifu's eyes, it meant that she was in low spirits and not in a good mood. He didn't want to disturb her, so he could only look at her with heartache. Just as she was thinking. The procedures had ended. It was time for the couple to toast. Yiqing Luo's elbow was knocked. From the side of his eyes met the bride's exquisitely made-up, cold and elegant face. Not knowing when, the demonic palace had already removed the red veil, pulling the groom to stand in front of her. The demon royal highness held a wine cup in her hand. A lazy smile appeared on her cold, picturesque eyes. Last night, didn't Madame want me to introduce you to the sovereign? I brought Dizun here for you. Madame Huang Xi stood up and raised her wine cup. There was no smile on her face. Congratulations to Lord Demon Hall for getting married to Lord Dizun. She was about to finish the wine in one gulp. A white hand pressed down on her hand. Madame is currently recuperating and isn't suitable to drink alcohol. This cup of wine. If Sir Demon Lord doesn't mind, I'll drink it on her behalf. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she smiled sweetly at Demon Lord. Devil Palace's brows shot towards Yiqing Luo as that pair of beautiful eyes bore an undetectable cold intent. After that, he said, Madam, you still have to protect the Demon Phoenix continent. Your health is more important, it's fine. Yiqing Luo's fingertips flicked as she took the wine cup from Madame Huang Xi's hands. After finishing it in one gulp, she smiled, It's a marriage as long as you're happy. Congratulations to the both of you. Devil Palace didn't have the intention to head to the next table to toast. Instead, he held onto the groom's arm. Dizun heard that a divine doctor had appeared by Madame's side and had always wanted to meet you. Although I'm not too willing to let Dizun befriend such a beautiful lady like Dr. Mu, but I can't reject Dizun's request. Chapter 5095. The bridegroom's handsome face immediately darkened a little. His black eyes, which were as deep as ink, swept across the Demon Hall coldly. As though he was warning something. As though he was suppressing his anger because of Demon Palace's words. Demon Palace's smile was even more enchanting. Her cold, beautiful eyes were cold. See, didn't I let you meet each other? Her words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Or as though it was because the groom wanted to befriend this divine doctor. As the bride, she unconditionally fulfilled her husband's wish. The groom held the wine glass as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. The raging waves in his eyes seemed to want to drown her. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Yiqing Luo didn't seem to see his rich expression as she smiled sweetly. Since Demon Palace doesn't allow it, then there's no need to get to know each other. She raised her wine glass and clinked it against the groom's glass. Anyway, I will only be by Madame's side and be her exclusive doctor. Other people's illnesses have nothing to do with me. After that, she raised her wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Her smile was flawless. Congratulations, groom. The groom looked at the wine glass in his hand as his throat rolled. That familiar low hoarse voice, indeed it was very similar. Even that tone seemed to be replicated. But there was only that one word. Demon Palace took a look at him. In the end, he swallowed the words that were stuck in his throat and silently drained the cup of wine. Demon Palace looked at Madame Huang Xi with envy. This Dr. Madame has found is really enviable. Madame Huang Xi's lips twitched as she forced a smile. Now that Demon Palace is married to the Overlord, based on the Overlord's great ability, he will definitely not let you need a doctor. Demon Palace gave another enchanting smile. Then she held the groom's arm and went to the other tables to toast. This side finally quietened down. Looking at the young lady's calm look, Madame Huang Xi's heart ached more and more. Egio opened his mouth and said lazily, Demon Palace obviously dragged her groom to you, don't tell me? Demon Palace already knew that you are here to snatch the bride? Looks like he knows. Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she smiled. Aren't you afraid that the Devil Hall would think that we're in cahoots by sitting together with me? If you become this king's consort, this king will naturally be on your side. Yijio once again brought up this matter. Yi Qingluo maintained her smile. King Yi is really persistent. Maybe if you're a little more persistent, you'll be able to win the heart of the beauty? Wing Nine's smile remained unchanged. Yi Qingluo snorted coldly, it still lit up. Wing Nine, ha! It's not time to dream yet. Yi Qingluo was expressionless. Yijio was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. That smile could only be described as amorous and flirtatious. It was demonic to the extreme. When Madame Huang Xi saw the conversation between the two of them, she wanted to stop Yijio but she suddenly stopped. The current sunset rain was probably feeling terrible in her heart. With Yi Wang accompanying her like this, perhaps it could divert his attention. Madame Huang Xi let out a long sigh. Suddenly, they keenly sensed that there were several pairs of eyes looking in their direction. When Madame Huang Xi looked over, she saw that although Demon Palace and the groom were toasting, their gazes were always looking in their direction. Especially when she saw Sunset Rain and Yi Wang chatting happily, she even whispered something. Chapter 5096. Madame Huang Xi's heart was suddenly in her throat. The Demon Lord and the Overlord. It seemed that the attention they paid to Evening Rain was unusual. Was it because they were worried that Evening Rain would cause trouble and kidnap the bride? Madame Huang Xi suppressed her thoughts and refocused her attention on the ceremony. It took at least an hour for the toasts to be completed. When the couple returned to the stage, they were already a little tipsy. The Demon Lord leaned on the groom's shoulder, his little hand hooked his arm, but his cold face was hooked into a smile. The groom was still expressionless, letting the Demon Lord do whatever he wanted. The matchmaker said a few more words. After that, the guests were allowed to eat and drink as they liked. Miss Mu. Yijio suddenly lowered his voice and gave her a bright smile. Do you want to know who is the person who has been staring at you from behind? Yi Qingluo raised her brows. You found him? From the moment she and Yijio started talking, she kept feeling a cold gaze directed at her. That frosty gaze, but she couldn't catch it at all. Whether he was a friend or foe, she didn't know. Yi Qingluo felt that since she came to the devil's domain, she felt that she was on the verge of losing her horse. Like everyone had a grudge against her. She also wanted to know who was the person who had been staring at her coldly. Listening to Yi Qingluo's inquiry, Yijio shook his head with a smile. No. Yi Qingluo? What the hell are you talking about? But I have an idea. Yijio's long and narrow phoenix eyes twitched. Do you want to try? Yi Qingluo didn't reply. Madame Huang Xi continued, if there is an idea, why don't we try? It's better than them hiding in the dark while we are out in the open. Madame Huang Xi's action was to divert Yi Qingluo's attention, so that she wouldn't be affected by the marriage between the Demon Lord and the Overlord. What's more, indeed, if there was someone staring at Evening Rain in the dark, it would be safer to put them out in the open. Yijio raised his brows, his slender fingers stroked his chin. I have observed for a while, once I get close to you, that gaze will move over. So I guess. He paused mysteriously and said, come out with me. Yi Qingluo sized him up suspiciously. What do you want to do? You are Madame's person, this duke wouldn't dare to do anything bad. Yijio grabbed Yi Qingluo's wrist through her sleeves and pulled her out of the crowd. It was a boiling cauldron of voices and the seats were full of guests. Their actions did not attract the attention of too many people. However, the pair of newlyweds on the stage could see it clearly. There was a momentary change in the expression on the groom's handsome face. His deep eyes stared straight at the departing figures of Yi Qingluo and Yijio. After a while he lowered his eyes. I'm going to sober up. The Demon Royal Hall smiled mysteriously and pretended to be considerate. Go. Madame Huang Xi's beautiful eyes were filled with worry and she wanted to catch up. But the moment he stood up, the Demon Hall glanced in a certain direction. Soon people from other continents came up to chat. In the blink of an eye, Yijio and Yi Qingluo's figures had already disappeared before their eyes. The entire square was contracted by the Demon Royal Hall. Walking out of the wedding stage, the periphery was decorated with flowers like a brocade. The atmosphere was joyous, luxurious and noble. Until they walked out of the crowd, Yiqing Luo shook off Egeo. Is this enough? Egeo raised his brows and looked around. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.